Womanly warrior, never lose your hope. Womanly harrier, never lose that fire. Womanly guardian, always on top. Yeah. From the end, from the ghetto, from the ends, nothing else. From the back up beyond, now she's coming on so strong. Heavenly warrior, never ever back down. Heavenly harrier, never give an inch. Heavenly definitely gonna glorify her Lord. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. To the ends of the earth, stumble and back to burn. She don't shy from no trouble, she reduces them to rubble. Ain't no foe that can withstand. Holy girl lives in no time. In the end, what holds her back? She turned more than our attack. Boom! Womanly warrior, never lose your hope. Womanly harrier, never lose that fire. Womanly guardian, always on top. Yeah, yeah. From the end, from the earth, stumbled and back to birth. She don't shy from no trouble. She reduces them to rubble. Ain't no foe that can withstand. Holy girl lives in no time. In the end, what holds her back? She turns into her attack. Womanly warrior, never lose your hope. Womanly harrier, never lose that fire. Womanly guardian, always on top. Yeah. Never let from the ghettos. No one loses, no stilettos. From the back of beyond, now she's coming on so strong. Heavenly warrior, never ever back down. Heavenly warrior, never give an inch. Heavenly definitely gonna glorify our Lord. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh yeah. Womanly warrior, womanly warrior, womanly warrior. Oh.
Just a little shout out to my hero, Hatun Tash. If you haven't seen her channel, get along now. Go and see her channel. Donate to her campaign. Big up yourself, Hatun, doing the Lord's work. We all absolutely love you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us. Actually, right now it's me because my guest is not here. Plus, I should have listened that song. So that song comes from Daily Corbett. I just listened the first bit of it. I didn't listen all of it. I think in somehow I'm grateful for the skills God given to people and they are using it. But I think that song was too much. So not sure if I will play that again, but my guest is here. Let's have my guest, and we are gonna talk about truth defenders. Thank you everyone who is in the chat and joining us. Hello.
Hi, Hatun. Shalom, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
Better than I deserve. How's everybody else out there?
Why are you late, brother?
No, I was here. I didn't know, because I was blocking your screen with my slides, and then so I could hear the music. I thought you were still playing the video.
I didn't see any slides, first of all. Secondly, I didn't know you were there, and then I sent the email to say see you in 15 minutes, and you didn't turn up in 15 minutes. Anyway.
Right.
Not good, isn't it? So you got slides which I don't have access to them, right?
You will in about 30 seconds.
Great. How are you doing, brother? So I have truth defenders with me all the way from America, and it's just kind of late. We turned up a little bit late, but that's okay, I guess.
Well, it gives everybody a chance to get settled in and get ready for the ride.
So, brother, are you still in California?
Yes, ma'am.
I watched a video clip from California. He's very brave Muslim. He calls himself I am the warner. Very brave, with like, he's fat, he's tall, and he's like, as a warner, he's just like about to beat gentleman. Because gentleman called his dog Muhammad. That's how he become convinced that Allah speaks to him. But Where are you while these Islamic gangs are on the streets taking over and beating people up?
Well, that guy, the Warner, he is a bully. I haven't met him. I know where he sets up because that's close to the area where I used to do my open air preaching ministry. And I know that brothers Hussein Mashni ran across him and he threatened him. And wanted to beat him up. And he's posted other videos where he's made veiled threats, uh, insinuating that he's carrying firearm, and also he's been threatening to beat people up, talking about his background as a fighter and his having a background in the streets. And so he uses his physical stature. He's a big man, and his aggressiveness to intimidate people.
He's just like fat and tall. That's it.
Well, I can sympathize with him with that because I'm a little bit on the heavier side than I would like to be, but he's tall. He's a big guy. But that's not intimidating for the average person. When we know that that's all they're doing, I apologize for the interruptions.
So am I right to assume because you are not getting out and dealing with these Islamic Dawah gangs, therefore they are taking over the streets with their bullying skills and with their violence skills, right?
Well, I did make 2 trips to go see if I could find him, and both times he wasn't there. And I asked around. I went to the promenade. I went to the boardwalk where he normally would be, and he simply wasn't there. So I'm going to have to go take another trip over there and see if I can find him and have a discussion about worldviews and preach the gospel to him. Not let him be intimidating like he tries to do with people, because there's no reason to be. Especially here in America, I know crimes happen. I know people do stupid things, but in general, we have a more restraining presence of authority, so that people are mainly just vocal and they're not as easily moved to act out on those threats. So I know he is a Muslim. His ideology, the Islamic worldview, does teach that a person that follows Muhammad and his Sunnah is to act in violence when the religion is insulted, when Muhammad is insulted, controverted, or even rejected. We know that. But we know that also that historically Muslims that profess to follow Muhammad are cowardly. Unless they're in the mob, unless they have they do it under the cover of darkness, unless they know there's a quick way of escape, they usually don't act out. It's just human nature, and I know that they try to be intimidating and try to act out, but it's a very small number, at least in the West. I know in the Middle East you have constant attacks, constant violence, but here we don't have it as much, but it does happen to the point where people have been murdered because of Muslims.
So I'm trying to do this chit chat with you in the intention, like by our end of chit chat, I will get your slides, and finally they
You
arrive.
should have them now.
Yes, now. Yep, that's at 8:09. Grade 9.
Yes. So this is a 10-minute buffer, which is standard, and
So I had you a couple of weeks ago where we talked about first we had a live stream on the critical biography of Muhammad, which was written by Robert Spencer. If people haven't got it, please do get it. Which is written by Robert Spencer. And after that, we had a kind of another live stream on Prophet of Islam and his little demons. I wanted to have this follow-up live stream in the intention of just like digging a little bit more into Biography of Muhammad by Robert Spencer. uh, and kind of give people some examples where people can use it in their evangelism. So that's why you are here. Are we in the same page?
Probably not. I thought we were going to do the concept, the issue of contradiction and abrogation of the sources, which kind of follows through with that, because if we don't have any credibility there, we don't have a good biography. So it does kind of follow in with that. Hatun.
Great.
Well, let's see where it goes. So let's start with what you wanted to discuss, and let's see how I can incorporate what I have set up for and lost sleep for.
Next time when I see you, would you be kind enough and then remind me to murder you?
No, Hatun, you can't do that.
Please do so. That will be very, very helpful. Okay.
It might get done for you by the warner.
Just a quick question before we get on with things. Brother, would you be able to kindly summarize for people where they can find you, and also what are you involved with? What do you do?
Well, my name is Luz Leinhart. I am the founder of Truth Defenders Open Air Preaching Ministry and Apologetics Ministry, which hasn't been doing a lot of open air preaching lately, but I do a lot of work with other ministries behind the scenes. Just recently, I started my channel thanks to our brother in Christ, Eric, and I've been also a guest on other programs like yours, and just trying to get the gospel out there again and do apologetics, present some simple ways of dealing with worldviews, not just Islam, but all world religions, philosophies. And so I am an electrician by trade, involved in the construction industry. And so apologetics and preaching and stuff is something I do out of my love for the Lord and the gospel and reaching out to those who are perishing. But I do have full-time work and try to balance that out when I can. So that's me.
Okay, thank you. And another thing you needed to point out, communication skills. So
that's a work in progress, under construction.
Well, I'm just like kind of skipping through your PowerPoints, and it's going to be different live streams. So please don't think I intentionally deceived people with the title. I will edit the title end of the live stream.
Was there? I looked at the video. I didn't see a title.
Didn't you see the message I sent it to you? Didn't you see the email I sent it to you? Do you not remember? Like what I expressed to you, what I asked you? But that's okay, brother. Like right now we are in live stream. I cannot like shake you. Maybe another time. Okay, so it seems we are going to talk a little bit about Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's book. Am I right, brother? Because that's what I saw in your slide.
Yeah, because he did write a book that is dealing with the question of the Quran, and has the Quran, how it was compiled. It's basically an introduction to the sciences of the Quran. For instance, we've dealt with the sciences of Hadith before, and this is very similar to that. The question of when was the Quran revealed, how was it revealed, how was it compiled, was it preserved, have there been any alterations to it, and such and so forth. So he did write this book over 20 years ago. I've had some notes on it for a long time. Preparing for this, I came across it, and so I went ahead and just dug it up again. And I wanted to use him as a starting point because he touches on a lot of different points that are interesting and follow through in and follow through with the whole concept. We'll get through this. We'll look. You get a bonus stream. Consider this a bonus, and then we'll do the one you want.
This is not bonus, brother. I am very grateful that you put these 54 slides together. So awesome.
Well, I only sent you 54 out of the hundreds I have. I had to be selective because I can speak on those 54, but I didn't want to bog it down. So on each one of those points, I have separate presentations that are more exhaustive.
I will adjust the title, those of you who are joining us. So we will be kind of talking about are Islam's primary sources materials are reliable. So we will have some comparative things over there. We will have, I'm sure, since we are going to look at some of the informations from Yasir Qadhi's book on the introduction of the science of the Quran, there will be lots of germs that you can simply ask your Muslim friends. I remember in my early times at Speaker's Corner, his book was one of the book Muslim missionaries were advising you to buy it. And soon after he expressed his thoughts on preservation of the Quran, on Ahruf and Qiraat, it kind of, no one decided that, people decided they are not gonna suggest his book anymore. So we should have very good informations, and hopefully you will find many things beneficial and then use it. And I just put this note comment on the screen, not because there is beautiful German Shepherd, but because even Brother Lewis turned up with like wrong slides. He's got fans who just wants to hear him. So I want to point that out. Too late now. Okay, so I got access to the PowerPoints. I will share the screen from this side. Can you be kind enough and then
okay, I'll introduce it. I was under the impression that we were going to discuss the.
That's okay, brother. I will, as I said, I will merge
for the
you
people of the audience. They need to know what the foundation is here. And so we're going to deal with, are Islam's primary source materials reliable? And what are the sources? We've dealt with those. The Quran, we have the Hadiths, we have the Sirah, we have the Tafsirs, and other references. And the question of their reliability is very important because if that's their foundation, and we'll see some of the quotes here, if it is impossible to be a Muslim without understanding some of these materials we're going to be talking about, and having not just a superficial knowledge, but according to the scholars, you have got to have a high knowledge of this information and the science behind it for you to even be a practicing Muslim. Your average Muslim out there, Hatun, doesn't know anything about his religion. I mean, that goes without saying for most world religions and most of the followers of religions. But with Islam, how often do we run across a Muslim where we're quoting their Quran, we're quoting their scholars from their sects, and they accuse us of lying, of deception, or fabrication? Now, it's either out of deliberate ignorance, they want to just pretend they don't know, or they truly are ignorant of this information and it's surprising to them. Well, if that's the case, the Muslim scholars make it very clear that this person is in danger of ending up in the wrong place because they're not adhering to the fundamentals. They're not following, they have no way to understand the Quran without understanding the Hadiths. And we'll get to that. So that's what this is kind of a preparation for. And I used Yasir Qadhi as well because most people are familiar with Qadhi. He's made himself very popular through the internet. So it's a familiar face and he's dealing with the subject matter. So,
Yeah, and it's always helpful to use the Muslim scholars whom Muslims respect. If you give them like Muslim scholar and Muslims have no idea what the scholar says, it is very difficult to move on with your argument. But with the well-known Muslim scholar where Muslims respect behind the doors, or they fight with one another behind the doors, but publicly kind of okay with it, it's always good to kind of bring them up as we speak. There is a comment. Does the Quran sound well written in Arabic? Because every translation seems so poorly written, hard to find a verse written book as it is in language skills.
Phonetically, to the ear, any kind of rhythm, just by nature, anything that is in a song or a poem, is appealing to the ear. The words, if you don't understand the words, because, for instance, you have orchestras that can play a beautiful symphony without words, and you're moved to your core because of the beauty of the music and the tone and the rhythmic sound waves. So when the Muslims try to recite the Quran in a rhythmic way, where it sounds poetic or musical in a sense, even if you don't understand a single word they're saying, if they are doing it in such a way where, as I'm not a musician, but musicians will tell you this, that music has a science to it, and you can't just sit there and hit the piano keys randomly and think that that's going to create music. Now, modern new age type of what they call themselves artists might think so. Yoko Yono would sit there and howl like a banshee and think that she's creating music, right? That was one of the Beatles' wives. And it sounds terrible, and everybody knows that. But to her, she thinks she's making some beautiful music with her voice. Well, she's not. Well, likewise with the Quran, when the Muslims do that, it's just, it's meaningless in that it might sound, you have a lot of Westerners that'll say it sounds beautiful, but they don't understand what's being said. You can be reading anything, and if you have the ability to read it in a song or poetic way, it'll sound appealing. So that's all that is. But there's nothing mystical, nothing unique, nothing spiritual about the Quran being read the way they like to read it for people.
I am where Al-Jahiz talks about his like 900 AD. Sorry, he's from 900 ADs. He talks about how linguistically Quran is like written badly and very inconstant, not following up things stuff. Also, Ibn Waraq, he talks about it as well. So there are individuals who have very much concerns regarding the written skills of the Quran from the language perspective. And someone might sing very well, but the words might be still very bad. So, and very dangerous. Just beware of that. I am just going to deal with 2 comments, brother, if that's okay, before you start. Actually, I think like you shouldn't have that much sayings in this live stream since you turn up with very different topic than what we are supposed to be discussing. Whatever I say, probably you have to say like, yeah, yes. Yes, I heard from Jai that their channel is having a problem with YouTube. There are false accusations, probably from Muslims. Please pray for them as they are trying to figure out, trying to get the channel back. At this stage, I understand channel is banned, but they are communicating with YouTube to get it done. So once when people kind of start dealing with Muslims and Islam, it is very common that Dinni YouTube, Sharia YouTube acts like that. So people are Sharia is very kind of, what is it that? Sharia is very dangerous. Sharia YouTube becomes very dangerous. You don't get freedom of speech, as well as people can simply make false claims and then they can get away with that. Brother Lewis, Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 to 12. A woman should learn in quietness and in full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over man. She must be quiet. What are your thoughts on
Absolutely.
this? I think the context is coming from a Muslim. Probably he's having problem that he jumped into my live stream and then he sees me as a woman. And last time when I checked, yes, I was woman and I am a Christian woman. Brother, your thoughts on Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 to 12?
Yeah, I like what Dr. Robert Morey would say about this verse. He said it's a cultural thing in a local church that is being dealt with there. And think about this: you have the congregation there, and the husbands and the wives are there, and the word of God is being preached or read, and the wife is leaning over. What did he say, or what does that mean? It's disruptive. So basically, they're being told just don't be disruptive, but it's also dealing with the context of a woman is not to teach in the sense of the office of a teacher, the office of a pastor. It's not that a woman cannot or is unable to teach. Obviously, women are very intelligent women, unlike what Islam teaches. There's no distinction there in the ability to teach between men and women, but the office of a pastor or a teacher is, as far as expounding on the word of God, is for the male. There are things that the women have been given responsibility over that are not for the man. So it's just a matter of an office or a role. And in the question of keeping silence is just about the disruption within the congregation during the service. And so that's all that's dealing with. So it's not telling women to hush and not speak at all. It's talking about the specific church, the ecclesia that's being dealt with there, and they're being told just to have some order in the service.
Thank you for that comment. It is good that Bible overrides everything, and it is good that God of Bible made man and woman in His image. He died for man, He died for woman, and it is good that in the body of Christ, men and women have different skills and different responsibility. I am very much grateful for that. And I just wanted to gently remind, if anyone thought this is the church you are coming, no. You are just attending or listening to live stream. This is not a church. It is good to remember, okay? Don't come here that replacing your church and then saying, oh, woman is talking in my church. I'm not preaching over men. Just beware of that. And also, last time, if I remember correctly, that gentleman is a Muslim. So come to me when you become a Christian. So right now, you are someone who is desperately need Lord Jesus Christ. So, okay, brother. What we have? So our second slide, sorry.
Yeah, so Yasser Qadi, again, he wrote this Introduction to the Sciences of the Quran in 1999. And let's get into some of the stuff that he mentions there, because it's very problematic for the Muslims. So you can go ahead and switch over. So I'm going to read the sections that come from the book, and I've highlighted in red the important parts that I think we need to focus on. So an introduction to the sciences of the Quran presents a detailed and thorough explanation of the sciences related to the history, understanding, and implementation of the Quran. The book provides the English reader with a detailed analysis of classic Muslim scholarship regarding the process of inspiration, which they call wahi, the various means of classifying verses of the Quran, the history of the compilation of the Quran, the meaning of the 7 ahruf and the 10 qira'at of the Quran, the miraculous nature of the Quran, the concept of abrogation in the Quran, the procedure and methodology of tafsir, and many other topics. The work has a number of sections dedicated to explaining the traditional Muslim refutations of certain beliefs of the Asharis in regards to the Quran. So I'm going to be pointing out a lot of the comments that the Muslims are making, the scholars, concerning other Muslims and other scholars, because they like to teach that they're unanimous on things, that there's only one Islam. They don't like to talk about the sects of Islam. They don't like to talk about the divisions within Islam, that they have different views. But we're going to see that over and over again, the Muslim scholars make it clear there is disagreement in the House of Islam. There's no unified, they're only unified in ignorance. That's it. But they are not unified in their theology, in their history, in their books, in their scholars, in their methodologies. They are certainly not unified in that. Next slide, please.
I think one of the things they also unified is against Israel as well as against Christians. But the rest is all very much messed up. Just before I move to the next slide, do you mind if I ask you a question, brother?
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a question, brother. Sorry. In case we've got people who are not sure for the terms that Yasir Qadi is using, can you be kind enough and then just kind of unpack for us what is this 7 ahruf, 10 qiraat, abrogation, asharis, all that? What are those terms that Yasir Qadi is expressing in the household of Islam? There are lots of disagreements as well as outside of Islam, so that he wants to clarify and deal with the reputations for this. Would you be kind enough just kind of unpack this few words for us?
Okay, well, you're more qualified than I am on this subject, but what basically is being said here, he's talking about, there's the concept that when the Quran was revealed, it was revealed in different dialects. That
Ahruf. Not different dialects, different ahruf.
Different ahruf. And so, see, and this is something that it's going to be, I have some quotes where they disagree on this even. So, and also the different, for instance, I have a Quran here, it's a big Quran, and it's got 10 different forms of recitation from different scholars on how you recite it. Now, each one of those is basically considered a different Quran. So which one was it revealed in? And some Muslims will say, well, it was revealed in all of them. Well, did Muhammad say it 10 times in each style, in each form? Or did he say it once, and that one way that he said it somehow miraculously contained all 7 or 10 different ways that they claim they have it in today? So that's something they debate about is do you pronounce it a certain way? Do you, the inflections, remember there's no diacritical marks in the Quran, in the earliest manuscripts. So you could take one word and it could have multiple different meanings, and it could change the context completely. So this is, so that's some of the things that he's just pointing out right there that he's going to deal with in the book. And
okay. Those are the kind of differences within Islamic circle, as well as questions from outside of Islam, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because there is criticism from without. People that have examined Islam take notice of these things. They realize, look, this person has this Quran, this person has that Quran. They don't match exactly. Or they, even within Muhammad's own time, there's a narration where one Muslim recited the Quran, and another one heard him, and he took him and dragged him to Muhammad and said, look, listen to the way he's reciting it. That's not the way I heard you say it. And then Muhammad had them both recite and said they were both right. So this is the kind of stuff that's still going on today. And the question is, well,
so that's something called ahruf and qiraat. Actually, Muhammad never spoke about qiraat, but ahruf. What about the abrogation? Would you mind kind of just give us the quick summary of abrogation?
Yeah, and we'll get a little bit more into that in a few slides. But abrogation is the concept of the abrogator and the abrogated. So what does that mean? So because there were some things that Muhammad said at one point and then said something to the contrary at another point, the Muslims were confused about which one do we follow, the first thing he said or the second thing he said. Or they find some things that are written in the Quran and then something's written in the Hadiths, and they contradict. And then they but they're both attributed to Muhammad, or one to Allah, one to Muhammad. Which one do they follow? So because this was a problem early on, either Muhammad or whoever wrote the Quran was forgetting certain things that were already said and written down or memorized. There was confusion. Wait a minute, there's a conflict here. We have a contradiction. So in order to overcome that contradiction, they came up with the concept of abrogation, where Allah, he gave, at least in 6 different places in the Quran, the concept of saying one thing at one point and then overriding it or superseding it later with something else. But it's also an issue because some Muslim scholars believe that there is a time where part of the abrogating verse, be it from the Quran or the Sunnah or the Hadiths, abrogates something, but then later that thing which was abrogated can be implemented again, or it's abrogated in the practice, but it's still left in the text. Then there are other times where it's abrogated and they expunge it from the text. So, for instance, the verses of stoning in the Quran. We know that Muhammad early on claimed that an adulteress should be stoned to death. Well, now the Muslims have a conflict because they're supposed to lash them according to the Quran. So what happened to those verses? Well, according to them, a goat ate them, and that was by Allah's leave, apparently, but the Muslims today practice the stoning and not the lashing. Well, they do both. It depends on where you're at, who you're dealing with. But they still practice the stoning, even though it's not in the Quran, even though a goat ate that. So the punishment for adultery originally was stoning. That verse was eaten by a goat who abrogated it or abrogated it. And then it was supposed to be that they received the lashes. So they were whipped. So which one should the Muslim practice? Well, they do.
So,
yeah.
If I am hearing you correctly, you are talking about early Muslims who kind of claim to be, according to Islamic tradition, lived in the time of Muhammad, claim that there are certain verses revealed from Allah. But as the time goes on, they are looking into Quran and then those verses are not there. And then idea is those verses abrogated. There are occasions within the Quran where Muhammad claims to forget certain verses, but Allah steps in and then says, actually, no, you have not forgotten that. We abrogated. We are sending something better or something similar. So the things which supposed to be in the Quran, they are not in the Quran, yet practiced by Muslims, as well as the contradictions within the Quran used by Muslims as under the label of, oh, that's been abrogated by that, when you kind of see the differences. And it seems you talked about stoning adulteries. It seems that currently Muslim world is kind of more seeing how Hadith abrogates the Quran because they are practicing the teachings of Hadith versus what the Quran teaches. Early Muslims, companions of Muhammad, if I remember correctly, expresses that because the certain verses not in the Quran and they're supposed to be practiced, therefore people will walk away from Islam. So that has been like concern regarding the missing verses or the verses couldn't make into the Quran by early Muslims. But as the time went on, it has been hidden in the under the label of abrogation. Will that be kind of correct to think like that, brother?
Yeah. For instance, you have the Quran abrogating the Quran. You have the Quran abrogating the Hadith. You have the Hadith abrogating the Quran. You have the Hadith abrogating the Hadith. So, and then it's all, and then all of that is still up to the Muslim, depending on convenience, if it's going to benefit his deen, his religion, his faith, his dawah. So they can do it arbitrarily. There's really no science to it other than they used it to cover Muhammad's blunders, and now they use it to use their deception, their makara, like Allah being the Hayr Makarin, the greatest of deceivers, they will use it conveniently when they're discussing their religion with a non-Muslim in order to hide something. And so, oh, that's abrogated. Oh, we don't follow. Oh, that's the Hadith. We only follow the Quran. Unfortunately, that they can't do that. And Quran only Muslims have a serious problem because of the content of the Quran telling them that they have to follow the Sunnah of the Rasul of Allah, the example of Muhammad. So they can only do that outside of the Quran because the Quran is not Muhammad's biography. So a Muslim that wants to be a Quran only Muslim is stuck in a dilemma of obeying the Quran that tells them to go outside of the Quran to practice their life. Because how does a Muslim practice the Quran but by following Muhammad's example? Where do you find Muhammad's example but in the other writings? So it's very problematic.
So you talked about ahruf, that is something revealed by Allah as 7 different ahruf. We will dig into it, what it is means. You talked about qiraat, which comes very much after Muhammad, and today there are different Qurans that are identified as qiraats. You talked about abrogation, and what about asaris? What are they?
So within Islam, you have, and we'll get into this when we deal with all the sects of Islam, you have, for instance, I've listed at least close to 90 sects of Islam, Muslims. And these are just by the most basic standard of what one professes to be Muslim. You have at least 90 plus sects out there claiming to be Muslims. And by the most basic criteria, you would have to accept them as Muslims. And so this sect here, which is Asharis, would be one of those sects. And I don't want to get into the little nuances about them just yet. And anyone can look them up really easily because I want to keep the flow going. I didn't want to make it about the individual things. What I wanted to get into is the issues with their scholars and their doctrines and the foundation of their religion. So basically, Asharis is just another sect of Muslims. You have Muslims arguing with Muslims. You have the Shiites, you have the Sunnis, you have those that are philosophical, those that come after the lines of for instance, Al-Ghazali and Averroes, who were the philosophers. You have those that believe in in Allah's parts that are actually real parts, as mentioned in the Quran. Those that say no, they're metaphoric, they're not literal. You're going to have Muslims that say
like physical parts.
Yeah, you're going to have those that say the Quran is eternal, those that say the Quran is not eternal. You're going to have all kinds of, like I said, all kinds of different disagreements. And the question is, well, which one's right? Because the Quran came like this. For instance, the Quran came from what they call the al-Kitab, the mother of the book, which they argue about, is it eternal or is it temporal? And irrelevant. They have this giant tablet on which the Quran is inscribed. Well, Allah from there sent it to Jibril, or Gabriel, supposedly. That angel or spiritual being, which we would say would be a demon, gave it to Muhammad. Muhammad then had his convulsions and wild spats, and he recited it to the hearers. Then those hearers took it upon themselves later on to write things down and spread that. So you have the Allah, the Kitab, Jibril, Muhammad, the hearers, and then the scribes, those that wrote it down. And then later the compilation and the standardization. So that's basically the following the origin of the Quran. And supposedly it was given in these different recitations, different modes, and they argue about that. And then from all of that, the divisions arose. Who heard what? What faction? For instance, Shi'at Ali, the faction of Ali, is the sect that followed Ali after the split. So each sect needs to support their leader and their successor, and so they're going to invent hadiths, narrations that favor them, or their interpretations. And so a lot of the sects are named after the founders, the ones that led this group away, and then they attribute the name to that group because of the founder. And so that's just basically Asharis is just another sect.
Okay, thank you.
So continuing on page 24 of Yasser Qadhi's book, it reads this. Read a oh, that was my part. I'm sorry, because the chapter 2 of the Quran, concerning the Quran, he writes this. The linguistic meaning of the word Quran. Here's where we'll see how they don't even agree on what the word Quran means. And I'm going to pull up mine because that's a little small for me to read from yours. So let me do this. Okay, the linguistic meaning of the word Quran. There are a number of different opinions concerning the linguistic meaning of the word Quran. Notice he's saying opinions. And then he says the most popular opinion and the opinion held by At-Tabari, who's one of their scholars, is that the word Quran is derived from qara'a, which means to read or to recite. And this is why I put on the side the meaning of read and the meaning of recite, because those two things are not the same. To read a poem means that you are reading it from a book or a printed text. To recite a poem means that you are quoting it verbatim without the need of the text or the book. So when Yasser Qadhi writes here, or Tabari, that the word Quran means to read or to recite, well, that in and of itself is a problem. Which one is it? It can't be both. So they have to pick one. And these are the little things I'm pointing out so you can realize they have nothing but opinions. They have suggestions. They have their own view. But because they disagree amongst themselves so much, this is where we say they have no foundation. Not even on what the word Quran means, where it came from, what it truly is. Did he recite? Did he read? There's difference of opinions in that. So he's saying Quran would then be verbal noun, and then I'm skipping through this because my only point is to highlight the issues. And then it says here, the recitation or the reading. See, again, is it a recitation or is it a reading? He's including both here because he knows they don't have a clue. Allah says in reference to the Quran, and it is a Quran which we have divided into parts. And then he says, quoting the Quran again, it is for us, and that's supposed to be Allah speaking, to collect it and to recite it. When we have recited it, then follow its recitation. Okay, so Allah is the one saying that he's going to recite it. And when Allah says after he recites it, that then you follow the recitation. And then we can go to the next verse, or the next page. So these are all taken from his book, all these pages. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my own side. So then on page 24 again, it says, on the other hand, Imam Ash-Shafi'i held the view that the word Quran was a proper noun that was not derived from any word, just like Torah and Injil. He recited the word without the Hamza, such that Quran would rhyme with the English word lawn. So Quran, lawn. And then it says, once the Qira'at also pronounced it this way, or once the Qira'at also pronounced it this way. But notice, he says, after we read the top part, then he comes down and says, on the other hand, there's this scholar, this imam, who has this view. So Yasser Qadhi gives us one view and then presents another view that is contrary to the others. And then it says, another opinion, so now we have another opinion, states that the word Quran is from the root qarana, which means to join, to associate. Wait a minute, this other guy over here said it means to recite or to read. But now you have another opinion that says it means to join or associate. For example, the pilgrimage in which the Umrah and Hajj are combined is called Hajj Quran, from the same root word. Therefore, the meaning of the word Quran would be that which is joined together. So here's a completely different opinion on what the word Quran means. And then we can go to the next slide.
If I remember correctly, that early Muslims kind of, once they compile it they come together and then they were like, oh, what shall we call this? What shall we call this? And then they decided at the end to call it Quran. So it is not something like revealed by Allah or by Muhammad. Early Muslims decided to do so.
Yeah, because it can't. When Muhammad says that he revealed books to the prophets, and the Quran is one of these books, well, it wasn't revealed as a book. It was revealed in parts. So it was later compiled and turned into a book, what we would call in the Arabic the kitab, or the Greek the biblos. So this is something that they have to explain also. Was it called a book when it was first revealed? Does Quran make a reference to the Kitab, the mother of the book? There's also a verse in the Quran that is called the mother of the Quran, which is a verse they quote.
So it is such a strange to hear that early Muslims were even disagreeing with one another and having many different opinions regarding what does Quran means. Like,
Yeah,
that's their whole book, and they are trying to figure out what it really means.
right. And I wanted to start with this because you got to think the Quran, their most fundamental, their foundation, their one so-called revelation from their God to them to practice their religion is already in question from the very beginning. They don't even know what to call it. They don't even know what it means. And this is their clear revelation from their Allah. So then
supposed to be a revelation from
yeah,
Allah.
supposed to be. Right. So on page 25, he says this, a fourth opinion, so now we got a fourth opinion, is that the Quran comes from the word kara'in, which means to resemble, to be similar to. So come on, Muslims, get it together. What does your Quran mean? So here we have a fourth opinion that it means to resemble or to be similar to. Hence, the Quran is composed of verses that aid one another in comprehension and surahs that resemble each other in beauty and prose. Yet another opinion, now we have 5 opinions. So another opinion is that Quran, and see the pronunciation of the word, even in English, there's so many different ways people pronounce it. Quran, you get some weird ones out there. Because it's phonetic, it's just there's no vowels in there. So it's the triliteral or lateral consonants. So Quran is from kar, which means to combine. So it doesn't mean similar or to resemble. Now it means to combine. It is called such since it combines stories, commands, promises, and punishments. So that's another one. Then he goes further. However, the opinion that is the strongest is the one that the majority of scholars hold. Notice the opinion that is the strongest. He's not saying what Allah revealed, what Jibril showed us, what the Quran says of itself. He's telling us the strongest opinion is the one that the majority hold. But truth is not established by the majority. Even in science, when dealing with atheists and evolutionists, and they like to appeal to the majority, most scientists believe in evolution. Well, so what? That's not how you do science. Majority rule doesn't dictate truth. That doesn't help.
I would love to think that, yes, majority opinion is the one kind of winning, or democracy is winning, like your 51 versus 49, we go with 51's view. But when you look at the Islamic traditions, if I remember correctly, that when they talk about strongest opinion, simply who is more favorite, not like if their opinion is whether correct or not. They are favorite, they are being backed up by the authorities. Therefore, they become strongest viewer. It is such a shame to remind it that early Muslims don't even know think about these people. Early Muslims don't even know what Quran means.
Yeah.
It's like opinion after opinion, after opinion, and then it goes on. Well, this is the strongest opinion.
Strongest
Well,
opinion.
make that opinion strongest because someone had government behind them. That doesn't make them true, or strongest opinion doesn't mean that's the true opinion. It is
Right.
such a shame that well-detailed book doesn't even get its definition from Allah.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah. Well, it's even like, for instance, here in the United States, the alphabet groups that deal with the immoral lifestyles that are out there, they're only, some say 10% of the population, others say it's much smaller, that's a deception, that it's more like 1% of the population leans towards that lifestyle of immorality. But they were getting the powers to support them, and their small numbers were overruling the majority in our schools, in our sports, uh, in our politics. Hopefully now that's changing, but it's not always the majority rule. Sometimes the minority can have such an influence and such an impact that their worldview wins, their policies win. So it is. It can go either way. But we are seeing here that in concerning the Quran and what Quran is by name is up for grabs. And now you have different Muslim scholars having different opinions. And Yasser Qadi is listing that the right one is or he didn't even say the right one, just the one accepted is the one held to by the majority.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding that, brother.
So on page 25, the next slide, we read, it may be asked, how does one explain the fact that some qira'at pronounce the word Quran without the Hamza? As it is well known that all the qira'at are equally authentic. So here we have equally authentic things being recited differently by different Muslims. And then it says,
And treated differently.
yeah, and written differently. So he says they're authentic. The response to this question is that the particular pronunciation is due to the particular rules of recitation, tajweed. Well, who made up these rules? Did Allah give these rules? Did Muhammad give these rules? Did Jibril give these rules? No, the Muslim scholars came up with these. So these are arbitrary rules to try to fix a problem. And this is what we will learn concerning the sciences of Hadith and the sciences of the Quran, is that the sciences they're talking about come after the fact. So the problems are there. They realize there's a problem, so they invent a way to try to do away with the problems and explain them. But that doesn't help.
So they have a problem. Scholars comes together to identify problem, and then they need to solve the problem. And then they've got very different views, and the way they handle the problem is very different because their views now overrides the Quran, right?
Correct.
It looks like consensus of scholars are simply overriding the Quran.
Yeah, and how do they get away with it? Well, they've got their majority rule. They've got their, and because we'll realize that what is the basis for this scholar saying that his way is better than this scholar? They're both respected. They're both considered educated, knowledgeable, without fault. They're not considered liars, but yet they have differences of opinions. So how is that reconciled? Well, some of the books I have here just throw out more arbitrary rules of, well, just follow the one you're under. So they're not going to make a decision. They're both right or they're both wrong. But if you're under this scholar, follow his opinion. If you're under this scholar, follow his opinion. That's their way of solving the dilemma. So then he says, in other words, the qira'at that pronounced the word Quran without the Hamza did not intend to change the pronunciation of the word Quran itself, but rather this occurs due to the particular rule of recitation that affects words in the Quran, including the pronunciation of the word Quran. Therefore, even though the pronunciation of the word Quran is different in these qira'at, the actual word is still the same. Now, here's the thing. The wording here is very tricky. Even though the pronunciation of the word is different, the actual word is the same. Okay, the word is the same, you pronounce it differently, but you still haven't told us what it means. So they didn't solve the problem with that. They simply said the pronunciation is different, but the word's the same. Okay, the same letters are there, but what do the letters mean? This didn't help. This didn't answer the problem. So,
But, he kind of tried to help us out. He shared many different opinions, and then like instead of saying, well, we don't know, he just like, I just go with the strongest opinion who was supported by the government or by the leader. That's
right.
something.
Yep. So the next slide, page 25 again, continues. The definition of the Quran. There are many definitions of the Quran. So it's like, yes or Kari.
So just, like, give attention. Like, Yasir Qadi is someone who expresses that he chooses his words carefully. Stuff. Remember
Yes.
when he was attacking David Wood and Jay Smith, he was saying like,
He's not as ultra crepidalian or something like that.
yeah. So he chooses his words very carefully, and then he doesn't say there are few definitions, but there are many.
Many definitions. Listen up, Muslims. Your scholar, Qadi, respected scholar, educated. He wrote this book over 20 years ago, and we'll watch a clip where he told Shabir Ali that he's going to revise it because there's some things that are coming up that he needs to revise. And he said this to Shabir Ali, I think 2 years ago, at least from the video that Shabir uploaded. But there are many definitions to the word Quran, but they differ in wording only. There is no difference of opinion as to what the Quran is. Well, what is it? So far they haven't told us what it is. They've told us that there's differences of opinion on pronunciation, on meaning, because one says it's a recitation, one says it's a similarity, one says it's we read the different at least five different opinions, but merely what the best way to define it is.
So
Well,
what I'm seeing from you, brother, I know you don't like me to jump in. I can
no,
feel that.
I appreciate it.
So you are just being unfair to Yasir Qadi here. Okay, I'm not kind of backing him up because he gave us the holes in the narrative, but he's simply saying, when you see something like when you eat baklava, you think that's like most delicious thing you ever eaten, but when you say this is the most delicious, that delicious doesn't cover up, like it's like more than most delicious. So that's what Yasir Qadi is saying. I gave you many different opinions on what is the definition of the Quran, but there is something in it. It is like just so powerful. We cannot find the right words to explain it to you. That's what he's saying, brother.
So he's saying this opinion is from Turkey, like the baklava from Turkey, that is better than the rest, but it's just so overwhelming he can't put it into words.
Like saying like the best way to define it, we don't know. We're just having problem with like how to define it best, and we are just like almost in best, but we couldn't kind of figure out the right way to say it.
Gotcha. So
Isn't that amazing? This is like book supposed to change all humanity, and every humanity is coming under this book, and people are practicing it. Yet Muslim scholars are telling us we really don't know what it means.
They really don't. Then he goes on to say one of the more appropriate definitions. So one of the more appropriate. So it's not the appropriate one, just one of the more appropriate ones. So you could still go with the other opinions, right? Follows. The Quran is the Arabic speech of Allah. Kalam of Allah. But wait a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm hearing from this is Allah speaks many different language. Quran is the Arabic language Allah speaks when Allah is passing the book.
Well,
And
this is also questionable, Hatun. We'll see that.
That's no that, but like one of the thing is like you provide couple of opinions. It seems to me that Yasir Qadi forgot to put this opinion in one of those things in page 23, page 24.
So he's kind of covering himself by just throwing these guys under the bus, that they're the ones with these opinions, they're the ones that disagree, and he's just reporting it. He's the messenger of the problems.
So Quran is the Arabic speech of Allah.
Right. Which he revealed to Muhammad in wording and meaning, and which he has preserved in the Mushafs and has reached us by mutawatir transmissions, and is a challenge to mankind to produce something similar. So I'm ignoring that stuff because I'm just showing the problems. So let's go down to the next slide.
Side note, Quran is not mutawatir at all. So in case like people fall into that. So did I understand correctly? Quran is the Arabic speech of Allah, and the copies of the Qurans we have in our hands today are identified as Musaf. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So then the breakdown, and this is on page 26, continuing, the breakdown of the definition. Oh, he's going to break it down for us, finally. So let's get a breakdown. The statements in the definition, the Quran is the Arabic, implies that the Quran is in the Arabic language. This therefore implies that the translation of the Quran into any other language cannot be considered the Quran. Imam Az-Zarkashi said, "Know that the Quran has been revealed in the language of the Arabs. Therefore, it is impermissible to recite it in any other language." But that's kind of a strange saying. If it is only in Arabic, and he's saying it is impermissible to recite it in any other language, if you recited it in another language, it wouldn't be the Quran. So what is he making impermissible? Do you see how that goes? If he has only an Arabic Quran, and I say it in Spanish, the Spanish was not the Quran because the Quran is only in Arabic. So what is there to forbid? For instance, the burning of the Qurans. If the Quran translations are not the Quran, who cares how they're treated? I did one time throw a Quran on the ground in front of Muslims. I was making a point. This happened once. I had a Quran translation. I was out on 3rd Street Promenade, and I was reading, and the Muslims were yelling, "That's not the Quran. That's not the Quran." And I said, "Are you sure?" They said, "That's not the Quran. The Quran is only in Arabic." And I held it, and I said, "So are you sure this is not the Quran?" And they're like, "No, it's not the Quran." And I went on the ground, and they went like this. They freaked. I said, "What's the problem? That's not the Quran." And so it showed their hypocrisy. They do know that things can be translated. This whole thing about only in Arabic, the Arabic Quran, perfect Arabic, it's just nonsense. Every language can be translated. Not every word in every language can be properly or accurately translated. That's why we sometimes use paraphrases, or we use what's called dynamic equivalents. For instance, in the King James Bible, 1611, you have archaic English. Thou shalt not. Well, today we would say you should not. That's what's called a dynamic equivalent word. So you find a perfectly suitable word in the modern language to explain or translate or communicate the archaic. It's not that difficult. So the Quran can be translated in spite of some Muslim scholars.
Would you mind if I ask a practical question?
Yes.
So if Quran is revealed in Arabic, language of Arabs, then why do we have many different words in the Quran which is not Arabic? Also, I would appreciate if you can kind of unpack for me or explain it to me, my brain just doesn't get it. So if I remember correctly, in Saudi part of the world, Mecca, Medina, Yemen, that part of the world, people were speaking so-called Arabic of the 7th century. And when Uthman orders Quran to be written down, Uthman expresses that he wants it to be in Quraysh dialect because that is the way it is being revealed. So it is not like there is nothing unique that's stating that Quran is revealed in Arabic, but point was dialect of Quraysh. Would you mind kind of comment on those?
Yeah, so because Muhammad never told them to compile the Quran, the Muslims were supposedly, and again, this is this Islamic narrative, they had those who had memorized it, and they were dying in battle, they were dying of old age, sickness, whatever. The Quran was being lost. There was some Muslims that were concerned, we're losing the Quran, because those who have it memorized, and notice, if
they lost the Quran already.
What's that?
They lost the Quran already. Because
Yeah.
only people who memorized the Quran, when they died in the battle, they lost, like these dead people took everything with them. So therefore Umar's son says, like, let no one say that I've got a full Quran, just say
Or, right.
what is it. So
We have
it
what's left.
wasn't like they are losing, they lost it.
Right. So they lost the Quran, and so they disputed about collecting what was left. And the Uthman, I believe, commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit to go collect the Quran. And he said, well, it's better if you tell me to go move a mountain than to collect the Quran, which tells you several things. One, Zayd didn't have it memorized, or he wouldn't need to go collect it. If there were a bunch of people that had memorized it, it wouldn't have been easier to move a mountain than to go collect it. So this thing that everyone memorized the Quran, a bunch of reciters, a bunch of memorizers, the Arabs at the time had a perfect memory and recall. Well, according to what we have here, that doesn't seem to be the case. There was a problem with collecting this Quran from those that were left. So then he commissioned him, he gathered them. Some of the Muslims held on to their copies of the Quran and did not want to hand them over. And they were different.
Some people got their hips broken, all that. Like it was pretty violent when they were trying to get copies of the Quran.
So finally, when supposedly Uthman gathered it, it was collected, he standardized it. Some say he made 7 copies, sent them out to different regions. And then supposedly he burned. Notice, the successor to Muhammad burned the Quran manuscripts that were left, that were in contradiction, that were different. And we have quotes on that they were different. And he burnt them because he wanted to standardize one so that there wouldn't be division amongst the Muslims. So this is very telling that they did not have one Quran, one standardized version. They didn't even know what to call it. Quran, what's that mean? I don't know. They have all these opinions. It's not a book yet. It's in fragments. It's in different. It's on bones, chicken bones, or whatever, on parchments, on palm leaves. It's not a book. So then they collected. They put it together. They standardized the text, and so this is how the Quran supposedly got standardized. And supposedly the Muslims have, according to Ibn Farouk in San Diego, California, he has a copy of the original Uthmanic Quran, right?
I'll tell you he's lying on that. But so you are making a point that in the Hadith, which talks about the collection of the Quran, compilation of the Quran, it has been emphasized that it needs to be written in the dialect of Quraysh.
Right.
So emphasis is not, oh, this is Arabic, therefore I don't give any permission for anyone to recite or read or memorize this outside of Arabic. Because also this is very concerning. Like, imagine lots of useful idiots are converting into Islam, and the way they kind of try to memorize and read the Quran in English or in their own mother tongue, apparently gonna cause like pretty stressful days. Therefore, you get to see how funnily they kind of do. They read the Quran because they can't even understand what they are reading in Arabic.
Yeah. And also, Zayd ibn Thabit, I guess, only found certain surahs with one person.
Yeah.
So, that tells you they did not have a very good recall memory, or not everyone was there at the time of the recitation. So, how could everybody have memorized the Quran as Muhammad revealed it? That would mean everyone, when Muhammad recites the Quran, he just smacks him, tells him, Ikra, and then he goes out and reveals it. All those that were there to hear him say it would then have to be somehow connected to all those that later went out and heard. There can't be any break whatsoever, because in order for this person not to miss a verse that this guy didn't hear, or this guy heard but didn't go tell that people, how do they manage all of that? It's an impossibility. Unless it's written down immediately right there, and then only from those immediate writings, or those who retained it all in its entirety were the ones propagating it to everyone equally, you're going to have fragmentation. You're going to have gaps. There are holes in the narrative. So it's a problem. The whole thing is a big problem. So
because Quran is revealed in Arabic language, therefore it is not permissible to recite in any other language.
Correct. So then we go to the next slide, and still on page 26. He says there are 11 references in the Quran that it is in Arabic, in the Arabic language. Amongst them, and he gives a couple of verses here, Surah or chapter 16, verse 103, chapter 12, 2, and chapter 42, 7. So these are examples of the Quran internally claiming to be an Arabic Quran. Then he says, since the Quran has described itself as being in Arabic, it is clear that any non-Arabic speech cannot be the Quran. So then we go to the next slide, because this gets really good. However, Hatun, a big, huge however, just like we had a big however in issues with the name of the Quran, we have a however concerning the Arabic of the Quran. However, he says on page 26, is every single word in the Quran originally from the Arabic language? Question mark. In other words, does the Quran use words from other languages? There exist narrations from some of the companions and many grammarians after them concerning certain words in the Quran which were claimed to be of non-Arabic origin.
Okay. Let me understand this. Okay. So, Yasir Qadi in page 26 expressed that Quran is revealed in language of Arabs, right?
Correct.
Same Yasir Qadi expressed that Quran is the Arabic speech of Allah, page 25, okay? Within 2 pages, now same Yasir Qadi is telling us, well, Quran is in Arabic language, that's Allah's language, but there are certain things in the Quran, they are not Arabic. Did I get that right, brother?
According to the companions and grammarians. What's a grammarian? Someone that knows languages, grammar, knows how to read, knows the different dialects, different translations. So these people are telling us that, however, not every word is Arabic. And then he continues, concerning certain words in the Quran which are claimed to be of non-Arabic origin. Thus, for example, and he gives us examples, Ibn Abbas claimed that the word Tur was Syriac for mountain. Tafika meant to intend in the Roman language. Hudna was Hebrew for repentance. Sijil was Persian for book. Sundus meant a soft cloth in Hindi. Wow, they got some Hindi in there. Probably referring to Sanskrit. Mishkat was a shining lamp in the Ethiopian language. And Siri was Greek for a small river. His student, Ikrimah, was also of the same opinion. So you have Ibn Abbas and his student saying, no, there's foreign words in the Quran.
Okay, just to kind of make sure people get it. Ibn Abbas is not someone who just like turned up on the street and then walking around. He is Muhammad's cousin, okay? Muhammad's very cousin is telling us, well, I know there are certain verses in the Quran, and I know for sure they are not Arabic. Here's some examples. And in 21st century, Yasir Qadi just explained to us in 2 pages ago, Quran is the very Arabic speech of Allah.
And gave us references to the Quran that it claims to be.
Yeah. And now he's pointing us to us, yeah, I'm saying those things, but Muhammad's cousin of our prophet told us there are certain words in the Quran, they are not Arabic. So,
but surely Hatun Ibn Abbas would have read the Quran. He should have known, right?
Yeah, so Ibn Abbas isn't like 619 or something. He's like just before they moved to Medina. Before
I don't know the date exactly.
He was born like before Hijrah. So by the time like Muhammad is dead, he's like late teens.
But about the companions, I'm sure they had a Quran or heard Muhammad recited in only pure Arabic.
Great. This is great. So non-Arabic words mixed with the word of Allah.
Yeah. And then Ibn Abbas, a student, continues the same opinion. Notice the same opinion. More opinions. So we go to page 26 again. Next slide. This opinion led some later scholars to come forth with numerous examples of words that were claimed to be non-Arabic in origin, yet mentioned in the Quran. As-Suyuti, 911 of the Hijrah, compiled a list of over 100 words in the Quran that were claimed to be non-Arabic origin, and even versified these words in a poem. He even wrote a poem about it.
Okay, so let me get it. I need to make sure I understand. So Quran is the very Arabic speech of Allah, and then it needs to be recited in Arabic. In the very Arabic speech of Allah, Muhammad's cousin told us and then give us some examples that there are non-Arabic words. And not only that, Suyuti, one of these great scholars, not only kind of gives us examples after examples, over 100 examples, but he even makes fun of it and then uses these words in poem.
But what did Muhammad say about poetry when we did a study on his biography? He was afraid that he was one of the poets, Hatun. Woe is me, poet or possessed? Woe is me, poet? The poets were considered to be demoniacs or influenced by demons or witches.
Don't insult Sweetie, brother. You know how minutes, like the moment when you say, oh, was the Sweetie possessed because he's using poems, you are just hurting the feelings of many Muslims who turns to Sweetie to back up their claims.
Well, that's Muhammad's fault, because it was Muhammad who said, it will never be said of me that I am one of these, the ascetics, the poets. I'm going to go hurl myself from a cliff, a mountainside. Muhammad disliked the poets so much, he wanted to commit suicide. So, of course,
good thing is, Suyuti is 900 years after Muhammad. So he's safe that Muhammad is not going to chop his head off.
Or hurl him down a mountain.
Yeah.
Wow. So there is a book by, it's called The Formed Vocabulary of the Quran. You can download the PDF from Answering Islam or other websites. And I have it. I have it right over there. It has over 100. No, I think is it over 100? Yeah, it's definitely over 100 non-Arabic words found in the Quran. And he gives you the etymology, where they're from. Some are questionable, but definitely we know they're not Arabic. And gives you the etymology of the word, where it came from, the different forms of it in Arabic or a different language. But we definitely know that they're not Arabic because, for one, there are perfectly good Arabic words that could have been used at the time of the writing of the Quran to where they wouldn't have to have borrowed foreign words.
It's not borrowing, it's stealing, brother.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Plagiarism, stealing,
Okay.
borrowing without permission.
Because there is no references given. They are like, remember they were claiming, oh, this is the very Arabic word of Allah.
Right,
Yeah. So you kind of need to say, oh, I'm just taking this from others.
right. So then we go to page 27. Then he says,
Same page.
other scholars, however, Hatun, denied this claim. Oh my goodness, the troubles. There's a song that says that. So, however, other scholars, however, denied this claim that there could be any non-Arabic words in the Quran, basing their evidences on the Quranic verses quoted above. Remember, he gave some quotes. They held the view that these verses precluded the existence of foreign words in the Quran. Imam Ash-Sha'afi, in 204 of the Hijrah, was particularly strict in this matter, for he wrote concerning some grammarians of his time. And some have spoken in this topic of the foreign words in the Quran, and had they restrained themselves from speaking, it would have been better and safer for them. And notice the exclamation point. He's upset about this. He said, these people should have shut up. It would have been better and safer for them, Hatun. Why
So
safer?
what does that safer means?
Good. That's what I'm scratching my head thinking, why safer? Why is it dangerous?
So that their bonds don't get broken.
The
They
hips.
don't get into prison. Oh, dear Muslims, no. You had to be a little bit careful. You are saying the things that putting your life in danger.
Stay safe, Habibis. This is dangerous territory we're treading. So he says it would have been better for them to just be quiet and not say anything. It would have been safer for them. For some of them have presumed that the Quran is part Arabic and part foreign. And again, an exclamation point. Look what it does to the Quran. It makes it two parts, part Arabic, part foreign. So now this is the problem that it would create. If the Quran is not in pure Arabic, it is in two parts, foreign and Arabic. But the internal claim, according to Qadi's references from the Quran, is that it is pure Arabic. So how do they account for the non-Arabic words? I think we have a solution. Let's see. He says, yet the Quran is explicit that there is nothing in the book of Allah except that it is in the language of the Arabs. So again, very, very clear. The Quran is saying of itself, it is only Arabic. And then we go to the next paragraph here. He says, don't change the slide. In attempting to refute this opinion, the opinion of the Quran, let me start over. In attempting to refute the opinion that the Quran contains foreign words, At-Tabari 310 AH claimed that these particular words were used by both of these languages simultaneously. What a miraculous solution. And thus the companions' claims that these words were non-Arabic only meant that they were also used by other languages as well. So the solution, Hatun, is, well, both languages use the exact same word at the exact same time. So it is Arabic and it is Greek. It is Arabic and it is Ethiopian. It is Arabic and it is of the Romans, because they both used it at the same time. That's why the companions thought they were foreign words. They just didn't know both people used it. That's the solution he introduces here.
But it talks about like his intention is to just simply refute. My intention, I'm going to comment on this in the intention, like I'm going to refute it. It's not like, okay, let's deal what is the truth might be here. my intention is to refute you, and only way I can refute you, well, those words were used at the same time with other languages. And actually, like, if you look deeper, probably they stole it from us.
Right. And
Yeah.
notice, Yasser Qadi is not just quoting, like Hatun said, just your typical Muslim walking on the street. So the references that Qadi and scholars will quote in their writings are usually heavyweights. They're not nobodies. They might not be the majority opinion, but they're not nobodies. So when he mentions At-Tabari, he is a somebody within the Islamic community.
So Ibn Abbas is from time of Muhammad. Imam Shafi is the kind of guy from the Shafi school. He's like from 200 after Hijrah. So 200, let's say 200 years after Muhammad. And then Tabari comes 300 years after Muhammad. And then Tabari overwrites everything because he needs to refute other opinions to make the Quran Arabic.
Yeah, and a heavyweight writer too. He didn't write
Yes,
small.
you kind of, the way we look at it, we kind of would say, okay, let's look at the early writings and then see what the early writings say, because idea would be people who are close to time of that individual would be more reliable, not like someone who end up in the world 300 years after Muhammad. In Islam, it's like later you come, you have more authorities. Something magical happens that you are able to know what was happening 300 years before you were even born.
Yeah.
That's a bit not right approach, but that's the approach of Islam anyway.
Yeah, so that was Tabari, and then he goes on in that's what's going on there. He says, however, this is not a satisfactory explanation, as the word must have originated in one of the two languages. So Tabari is being refuted by this opinion. He's saying, however, this is not a satisfactory explanation. So
Is that what Tabari is saying, or is that what Yasir Qadi is saying?
This is Yasser Qadi in this final after the reference to Tabari.
Yasir Qadi is commenting on Tabari and then saying, well, clearly Tabari got it wrong, because word must come from either one. It can't be both.
Right.
It has to be
It's just illogical. There's no historical precedent for it. There's no. He can't give us proof that there was a time where two different languages came up with this type of this abundance of words, because like we have here over 100 words happening in two different languages at the same time, where the people didn't know about this.
So
this is
problematic.
problematic.
Do you mind if I just kind of say you back what I'm hearing so that I understand correctly? Anyway, that I wasn't asking, do you mind? That's what I'm going to do. So let me tell you what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Quran is the Arabic, and if it is not Arabic, it is not the word of Allah, because it is even though they couldn't figure out what this Quran means, but it has to be the Arabic speech of Allah. And if there is anything in it not Arabic, therefore that cannot be the word of Allah. And then cousin of Muhammad and his student expresses to us that Quran, there are words in the Quran and they're not Arabic, and then gives us some examples. As the time goes on, you've got Muslim scholars even use these non-Arabic words to write poem about it, okay? And then you've got Shafi school expresses no, they were all together, and then 300 years after death of Muhammad, Muslims are figuring out Quran must be Arabic because what that it states, and if it is not Arabic, we have a problem. Tabari steps in and then says, I'm going to fix the problem, and the way I'm going to fix it, those words were used at the same time in different in different languages. And then Yasir Qadi makes the conclusion remarks of, but Tabari cannot be correct, even though he's got good intention. He wants to uphold the Quran. He wants to prove that Quran is correct, but His explanation cannot work. Why? Because only one of those two languages, one of them must have the original word.
Correct. So the companions made a mistake in, well, no, the companions were correct in assuming that they were foreign words.
Yeah.
The attempt to rescue that by saying they were both correct at the same time is refuted by the fact that there's just no proof of that. It just doesn't make sense. So it's just an attempt to rescue the problem. Again, they keep inventing problems to solve problems.
So
They're
what
not
I
helping themselves.
what you are pointing out is, even when it comes to very basics of Islam, whether Quran is only the Arabic speech of Allah, all that, we get to hear there are very, very different opinions about it. And bottom line is, we will never know what is the what it is. We don't know what is the definition of the Quran. We don't know, even you pick one definition, we don't know like if that we are shown that doesn't even work.
Opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just opinions after opinion. And then pick your side and go with that. But there's no one that's correct. Then we jump over to page 138 on the next slide. And we bring it coming up to Uthman's compilation, which occurred in the year 24 of the Hijrah, or according to others. So now we have a problem with, when did Uthman do his compilation? The year 24, or according to others, the early part of 25. Now some might say, oh, it's a small gap. No, this is history you're trying to give us. This is a serious event. It's not a small thing. That's why I'm highlighting this. If you have see, history is linear. It starts and it moves forward. It's not cyclical like the Eastern mysticism of Buddhism, where it's just circular. It's linear. So if you have an event happening, taking place, there's a chronology. And this event happens, it has cause and effect. Other things are involved with that have to follow in order for the consistency of the chronology to continue. If you have Uthman compiling the Quran in 24 and not 25, that means in that year, at that time, in that region, there were certain events that were taking place that have to have correlation with the year 24. But if somebody says, no, it happened in 25, well, now you have to change everything that supposedly happened in connection with the year 24 and move everything to 25 and have it continue to make sense. So you can't just arbitrarily change something and say, well, that guy says 24, he says 25. Not a big deal. Tomato, forget about it. You can't do that. This is why it is a huge problem of chronology with the Quran. Where was this surah revealed? Mecca or Medina? Was the entire chapter in Mecca, or was part of the chapter in Medina, or vice versa? If we change those things, that means we're putting Muhammad in a different city at a different time, in a different place with a different audience, in a whole different scenario. It breaks down the entire system when you don't have a real, true, accurate chronology. Because they're all claiming to have the truth, they're all claiming to be scholars, they're all claiming to appeal to the sources, but they're all disagreeing. So here you have on page 138 of Yasser Qadhi's book, Uthman's compilation occurred in the year 24, or according to others, the early part of 25. So it's like, could you do that with your own birth? Well, I was born in this year, or maybe I was born the year after. Who knows? Well, that's going to change everything about your parents. If your mother can't be placed in this year, she has to be placed in the other year. Well, that changes everything about her life, because what was she doing at that time in this year versus at this time in this year, and everything related to that. Maybe grandma came by to visit, but grandma remembers it was the year 24. If it was the year 25, Grandma says I was at the beach sunbathing. It creates a huge mess when they can't get their narrative straight. Think about this, Muslims. Which was it and why? And think about the consequences, cause and effect, how this will affect it one way, this will affect it another way. You can't have it any which way any scholar wants it. It's arbitrary. You have no history. You have no foundation. You don't have anything. Yeah, give them a moment of silence for the Quran, because it's dead, dead.
I'm finding it's disturbing, the strange that Muslims are. It's not like. Let me go back to your slide. It is not like, oh, this is one opinion, this is one opinion. It says like according to others.
Right.
Like, people are already discussing this, like when the Quran was compiled. Muslims are discussing it.
Yeah. So then we go to the next slide, page 138, and it says, I like how he wrote that, Abu, with two O's, like Abu. Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr's compilation of the...
So, let me just summarize what we looked at. Or would you mind summarizing what we looked at? Because we looked at
go ahead.
Different things, and we are now moving to another part of different opinions of the Quran.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the beginning of the reference to these writings being called Quran, but they don't know what the word Quran means. Different opinions. The compilation of it is in question. There's a lot of opinions as to who compiled it, from whom. There's a question about the language of the Quran. Is it pure Arabic? Is it Arabic and foreign? So it's two parts. There's a question about the pronunciations of the Quran. Is it in one dialect? Is it in another dialect? There's a problem with what else do we have? We have just problems galore.
Yeah, so we looked at what is Quran, what is the definition of it. No one knows. We looked at whether it's Arabic or not. Again, it kind of end up like no one knows. Everyone is disagreeing with one another. And now we are going to look at how the Quran is being compiled. But before that, Truth Defender point out to us that actually Muslims don't even know which year was Quran supposed to be collected. So,
yep, problems with that. So we go to page 138 of Yasser Qadi's book, and he states here, Abu Bakr's compilation of the Mus'haf differed from Uthman's compilation in the following ways. So he lists some of the differences between Abu Bakr's, and Uthman's compilation when they collected the Quran, supposedly. And I just highlighted a few points. One being the reason that each of them compiled the Quran was different. Now that might not seem like a big deal, but it is. Because remember, neither Allah, nor Muhammad, nor Jibril ever said to collect the Quran. So why did they do it? Some of them thought, well, we're losing it, or we lost it. And in response, so we have a difference in the reason for doing that. So now the question comes, should they have done it? If there's a difference in opinion as to why then they're just doing it because they feel like it. Should there be a Quran the way we see it today in existence, not according to Allah, not according to Muhammad, not according to Jibril? Why did they do that? Why did the Muslims decide they're going to collect the Quran? Who told them to do it? It's not their business to do that and take it upon themselves. Didn't they trust in Allah to preserve it in their hearts? Didn't they trust Allah to preserve it in whatever copies were in existence? Didn't they just trust their deity? Was it meant to be preserved? That's another question. Did Allah obviously didn't want the other writings to be preserved. Why should this one be any different? He failed with the Torah. He failed with the Zabur. He failed with the Injil. He failed with the writings of all the other peoples of the world because supposedly every nation had its own prophet and its own book. So Allah so far did not care to preserve any writing that he ever revealed or any book. Why should this one be any different? Why did these Muslims, after their prophet, decide, let's do something Allah has never done before, never ordered us to do, never was able to do? Let's preserve it.
If I remember correctly, that goes under the Buddha. That's something Muhammad didn't do it, yet Muslims choose to do it because
Innovation.
even in the Hadith, it says like, how can I do something that Prophet didn't do? So Buddha, Islam is the religion of this Buddha. And you've got tradition talks about like Buddhists are not going to be forgiven, all that. But yeah, very much messed up. So now we've got, God knows what was the reason that they compiled the Quran.
Wow. Well, we're given some reasons. Abu
Some
Bakr,
reason, we don't know the reason.
right, these are speculation.
Yeah.
So they speculate Abu Bakr compiled the Quran in response to the large number of deaths, which we mentioned earlier, of those who had memorized the Quran and in fear of its being lost. Uthman, on the other hand, compiled the Mushafs in response to the inauthentic recitations. Did you hear that, Hatun? His reason for collecting it was in response to the inauthentic recitations that newcomers to Islam who were ignorant of the Arabic of the Quran were reciting. Is he telling us that there were false Qurans running around?
So when you look at the story of Yamama, you get to
Who's
see
mama?
Yamama in the Battle of Yamama. So when you look at that, you get to see, because the way Muslims are, so both of them are Muslims. It's not like new converts at all. Muslims are reciting the Quran, but they are reciting so differently that one group of Muslims is calling other group of Muslim disbelievers kafir. It's just so different. Like they've got different Quran. This group has different Quran. Therefore, they are calling one another kafir. So that's kind of, I think in here they are trying to say that's the response to the unauthentic recitation. But it's just that's like very kind of lightly taken away, because like when you call someone kafir, you are already putting death on their head, death call on their head in here. So that's what was happening. Like they are calling one another kafir. Therefore, apparently, according to one of the reason that
Well,
they decided to file
they
the Quran.
forgot the warning of Allah to Muhammad and why Allah took out Muhammad. If you invent something that I did not say, I will take you by your right hand and I will sever your aorta. Yeah, these Muslims apparently didn't know that verse, that warning, or didn't care. They said, we're going to invent something for Allah anyways. You see how all of these things have, there's repercussions, folks. There's domino effect. You knock one domino down, it knocks down the next one, knocks down the next one, and all of a sudden, everything is falling. It's just interrelated, interconnected, cause and effect. You mess with one thing, you mess with another. It has consequences. If these Muslims are reciting inauthentic Qurans, where are they getting them from? How is it that they have the confidence to contradict the other recitations and pretend theirs are correct? Who's dictating which one is the right one? Remember, it's all arbitrary, opinion, opinion, opinion. These sciences of Hadith, sciences of the interpretation of the Quran, came later because these issues were there. The fact that they were having problems, that they couldn't figure it out, caused them to say, oh, well, not in Hebrew, but whatever Arabic expression they had to figure out a way to explain all of this. And they're admitting in response to inauthentic recitations that the new converts to Islam were bringing. And then he says he wished to unite the Muslims on the proper recitation of the Quran. Well,
So he didn't know that Quran is revealed in many different ways. Different.
Right.
Uthman was there, living in the time of Muhammad, and didn't know. Therefore, he's uniting something like Allah out of kindness. Allah is revealing Muslims many different versions of something, and then Uthman is deciding, well, these many different versions are causing disunity. I'm gonna unite them by compiling one way of it.
And so early on, not a lot of time has passed between Muhammad and this, and already they have all these fabrications. And now we can say, okay, fine. So they can say, well, the devil, the shaitan, the enemy wanted to cause division. But remember, they believe that Allah will preserve all of this. Allah will deal with the not disbelievers, with the polytheists, with the innovators. They have these in their teachings and their doctrines that Allah will make them prevail. They will be victorious. So how is it that all these problems are arising so early on? From the beginning, it's just problematic. So that was the reason given, the explanation for why they differed, Abu Bakr and Uthman, why they decided to collect these Qurans or create the Quran, and therefore order certain. And then it says here, so he wanted to give the proper recitation of the Quran, and therefore ordered that the eradication of all other mushafs, so that the people would have only one mushaf in their hands. Eradication? Didn't somebody just recently get assassinated, murdered, because he decided to eradicate one book of the Quran, one Quran, and the Muslim side as so offensive that they thought it was okay to murder him? But here you have Abu Bakr, or no, that's Uthman, deciding to eradicate all of these other recitations, all of these other Qurans. Didn't see a problem with that. He wanted to standardize one.
Muslims can do it. It's absolutely fine. Other day we were talking about it. The suffering that Quran went through under Muslims is very, very bad. It got burned. It got eaten by a goat. It had hot oil is thrown upon it. It tear down. People sell it for 60 dirham. People sunk it in river. And when
Put it in
Muslims
drinks, right, for to save themselves from curses. They mix it in a drink, make some kind of.
So when Muslims do all this, it's absolutely fine. But when non-Muslim holds it and then expresses that he has concerns by the teachings of Quran and then burns it, yeah, that becomes non-acceptable, and then they come and take your life for it. Very, very dangerous ideology this Islam is.
Yeah.
But
So
thanks, Sir Kadi, for pointing out, yeah, there were lots of nasty things happened to the Quran in early stage of Islam.
Yeah, we appreciate this. Then the third difference is in the number of mushafs. Abu Bakr ordered to be made was only one, whereas Uthman ordered several. So he just wanted one. This guy wanted several made.
Yeah, and even in that several, we don't know how many. Some traditions are 4, some traditions are 9, some traditions like God knows what, like 7. So we don't know. We
can make up a number, Hatun. Why is our opinion any less worthy than theirs? Everybody has an opinion. Throw ours in.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Challenge us. So then the next slide, page 138, continues the differences. So it's showing 7 differences. Since Abu Bakr did not face the problem of inauthentic recitations of the Quran, it's funny how only one guy was dealing with fake Qurans. The other guy, somehow, everything was pretty good. Did not have to take the step that Uthman did in destroying all other written copies of the Quran. Notice, he's calling it copies of the Quran. So Uthman did, in fact, destroy Qurans. It wasn't just fabrications that are not considered the Quran. He's calling them Qurans.
I think when you look look through Islamic tradition, it is unjust to say, oh, Abu Bakr didn't face problem regarding the unauthentic recitations, because those recitations were available and still circulating. Those people were living still. But the main concern in the time of Abu Bakr was apostates and the zakat. So that's what his focus was. People were leaving Islam, and he just wanted their money. So that's what he did. He dealt with apostates. Therefore, that was the focus. Focus wasn't like, okay, people are start calling one another kafir, all that, because they were not dealing with that. They were trying to figure out whether zakat is part of Islam or not, whom we are gonna murder. And Abu Bakr
zakat
in the
is
throne 2 years.
zakat is the extortion money. It's like the mobsters of our time, where they go to the store owner and they say, "Hey, give us some money, and your business will be protected." And the owner says, "Protected from who?" From
That's
us.
jizya.
Oh, zakat. You're okay. That's just
So that's like money Muslims give to the Muslims to
right. Okay,
spread Islam.
you're right. I confused, but jizya is the extortion money. Zakat is the money they give, and part of it goes to jihad. Yeah, so it gets distributed, and
Yeah.
part of it used to go to Muhammad, right? And he took 1/5.
Yeah, because he was like very generous. He wanted to take whatever he
Yeah,
could.
yeah. And then they want to say, "Oh, poor Muhammad. He was not wealthy and he lived a humble life." Well, out of the plunder, he received 1/5. That was Allah's share that went to Muhammad, apparently. So then we have, so he's destroying the Qurans. Uthman's decision ensured that all future copies would have to rely upon the original Uthmanic ones. Now, do we have an Uthmanic Quran, Hatun, that we can verify that this is Uthman's Quran?
No, we don't have.
So then we can't know that. So if the purpose was that this would be the standard for all future copies, we don't know what we have then, because there's no original to test anything by.
Earliest almost completed Quran is from 8th century, almost, and that's not complete. And that doesn't match with the current Quran we are reading. So there are lots of variations between them. We don't even know when is the earliest perfect Hafs Quran that matches with our current Quran. That's like another thing. But yeah, so even though you pointed out a little bit earlier, Uthman sent several copies to the different cities with individual who memorized the Quran, we still don't have his copies that we cannot compare what was it in it.
But Uthman's decision was to ensure that all future copies would have to rely upon the original. So he failed in his decision, his plan to have a standard that would be used for all future Qurans and copies. Gone.
So one of the things we see is in 900s that there are different Arabic Qurans with the different chapter numbers, different verses are circulating. So Uthman is doing this in 600s, 652 to 53 to 55, God knows, they don't even know the date. But so this is happening in mid 600s. In 900s, we've got different Arabic Qurans with the different chapter numbers, with the different verses, additional chapters. So whatever Uthman intended, even though because his government, so kind of the one who has power, the one who has backup, kind of rules, it seems within 300 years, 200 years, it was not successful.
Such a shame. Wow. So then number 6, Abu Bakr's Mus'haf, according to one opinion, not a fact, not according to history, verifiable proofs, not according to Allah, not according to Muhammad, not according to Jibril, according to opinion. Opinion seems to be king here. Opinion is the standard for everything. So
Shadi Nasir talks about how scholarly opinion overrides very basics of Islam.
Sheikh opinion. So
And now like you are pointing out, yeah, opinions are simply individual's opinion is simply deciding what Islam is gonna be.
mhm. So Abu Bakr's Mus'haf, according to opinion, did not concern itself with arranging the surahs properly. So he didn't care how he put it together. So the first to the last, to him it didn't matter. He just put it all mishmash. Uthman, on the other hand, arranged the surahs and verses in their proper arrangement. Now, how would he know what the proper arrangement is? What dictates that?
Allah knows best.
Yeah. We'll leave it there because one guy didn't care. The other guy supposedly, and we'll see that there was no proper arrangement. The Quran to this day is a total mess, chronologically speaking, amongst other ways. And then number 7, according to some, oh, here we go. According to Charlie around the corner, or according to Abu, next door. So according to some, the Mus'haf of Abu Bakr was written to preserve all 7 ahruf. But the Mus'haf of Uthman only included 1 harf and left out the other 6. This opinion, however, does not have any basis to support it.
There are some opinions out there tells us, well, Abu Bakr's Quran had the 7 ahruf that as Quran revealed in 7 ahruf according to Islamic tradition. Uthman got rid of that 6 ahruf and then he just had 1. Well, I shared this information, but I just wanted to express this has nothing to hold on, so this information cannot be trusted.
Right.
Don't you love Sirkadi? I love you, Sirkadi.
So, anyways, I have the book in PDF. It's accessible. You can also order the book. And there was a clip I had. Am I able to share a clip on my phone through the screen, Hatun?
Not on your phone, brother. If you needed to share a clip, you just like email it to me and then I put it on the screen.
Well,
when you play it on your phone, your phone must be just on the where the camera is, and then just like sound, everything needs to work. We can try, but that's, I'm assuming, is gonna give me another reason to kill you when I see you.
because I didn't get a timestamp on the video.
Not early Muslim opinions.
Yeah,
I've got material, but I don't know which timeline that I am looking in that material.
Well, it is my opinion, Hatun, that it might work. And you know how opinions are king these days. So let's see. Are you able to transfer that to present it?
Did you email me?
I texted. Should I email it?
Yeah, so there is a difference. In my opinion, there is a difference between phone and computer. In my opinion, I am doing the live stream from the computer.
Okay, so that does make sense. So we will reply to Hatun and attach from here. Short 1 minute, so it should be able to go through. Cannot attach. Attachment should be smaller than 35. I cannot share it according to the opinion of iPhone.
Okay, then let's move on. So
let's move on. Well, what it was saying is it's Shabir Ali is reviewing the book. He's had it for some time, and the question is asked because he did a whole series on reviewing books, and one of the questions at the end is usually, did you have any issues with the material or book? And he says, well, Yasser Qadi said this. So he doesn't say he has issues with it, but then he quotes Yasser Qadi, and Yasser Qadi is stating that that he wants to update the book because new information has come to light. That has,
So if new information came to light means like, oh, some of those dead people got out of the grave and then they changed their views, probably.
yeah, see, that's the thing. What, I wonder, does he think needs to be updated in the information? Does it have to do with the what is written on the Quran, what he would write as being the original Quran? Would it have to do with manuscripts? Would it have to do? And I don't know, since I don't really pay attention to Yasser Qadi, I don't know if he's ever come up with an updated version of the book. I'll have to look that up. But this is what Shabir Ali, and that was 2 years ago that Shabir Ali uploaded that video where he says that.
Let me see if the sound is working.
Now, is there something I don't like about the book? Well, and Dr. Qadi told me that he is working at writing something new on the subject, and he considers this.
Can you hear it, brother?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. Can I just confirm, those of you who are listening, if you were able to hear it or not? If that is the case, yeah, I hear the sound. Thank you, Phil. I love you, Phil, brother. Thank you for you are always there and you always fix things.
Now, is there something I don't like about the book? Well, and Dr. Qadi told me that he is working at writing something new on the subject, and he considers this to be old. In fact, this was written more than 20 years ago. And since then, some new manuscripts of the Quran were discovered, rather old manuscripts were newly discovered, and that changes our thinking a little bit about the details of the history of the compilation and recitation of the Quran. So we need a more updated and modern information. But this book, it gives you a solid background on some of the basics of the traditional understanding of how the Quran came to be put together to be found in our hands today. So I would highly recommend this book as an essential bit of reading. This book has changed my life, and I hope that it will have an impact on yours as well. Maybe it will even change your life. Thank you for listening.
This is so funny. Last part is so funny. He says like negative things about the book, and I'm just like, this book changed my life. It gave me of understanding how the Quran is being compiled. But yeah, apparently, actually, not new manuscripts came to light. Those manuscripts where their studies being finished, but they don't change the opinion of these Muslims have about how the Quran is being compiled, because manuscripts, finding like kind of figuring out the new manuscripts is not going to change the opinion of that person. That person, the one who is already dead, write it down what he thinks, and he's dead. So you can't just change the opinion of someone who's been in grave for.
Well, hold on, Hatun. Let me object. Remember Zombie Mama? She changed her mind. Muhammad brought her back. She changed her mind, believed in Muhammad, and then she got sent back to the same way she was. It's possible.
So what manuscript shows us is what was circulating in early days of Islam, in early centuries of Islam. So it is not going to change the opinion or add another opinion. And book is not mainly focused on the manuscripts. Book, like, part about manuscripts is very little. I think 1 chapter or something. The rest is all about like, oh, what are the other opinions? But as Shabir Ali expressed, the book changed his life.
And he hopes it will change our lives.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so too. I hope Muslims are paying attention and this does change your life, that you realize what a mess this Quran is, whatever that is. Because it is life-changing. If you follow what we're presenting here and you understand the issues, it should change your life. You should make a life-changing alteration. A lot of alterations, changes. Turn to Christ. Turn to the one revelation that has not had these issues. The biblical revelation of the true word of God that has the gospel that can save your soul. Humble yourselves. That's what the Lord calls. The Bible says God resists the proud, gives grace to the humble. If you humble yourself before the living God and call upon his name, you will be saved. This Quran that you have in your hands, Muslims, is an absolute disaster. According to your scholars, according to your own masters of the sciences of Hadith and Quran and Tafsir and Sirah, change your view. Let it change your life.
According to some opinions, brother.
According to some opinions.
Yeah.
So
Strongest
that's
opinion.
now.
According the strongest opinion.
Now that was only a little bit of the book. Remember, so I had to stop because I thought I can keep going with this stuff, all these issues, and it's an interesting title that he gives because I have another book here that's got a very similar title. Where did my books go? I know I had more books than this. I am missing books, Hatun. Where are they at? Okay, let's forget about it. But I have another book with a similar title, The Sciences of the Quran. And in it, it gives a lot of information concerning the oh, here it is. I had it in my hand. I showed this before. The perfect sciences, the perfect guide to the science of the Quran. And in it, it has example after example after example, naming scholars and isnads agreeing. In other words, one scholar agreeing with another scholar, all the way of so many variant opinions about the issues of the Quran, such as when it was everything Yazir talking about. So I'm sure he probably read this book because I do see some similarities. I've read this book 1.5 times, and it's a very interesting book because it's just like Yazir Qadi's honestly presenting the problems and presenting the stupid solutions that are just opinions. This book does the same thing, and it shows you that the chronology of the Quran is a problem because there are chapters in the Quran where not the entire chapter was given in Mecca or Medina, like I mentioned earlier. Some of the parts of the chapter are inserted because they were revealed somewhere else, which means you now ruin the flow of that context, and they're inserting something to either help the flow, correct the flow, or it's disrupting the flow where you're all of a sudden going, whoa, how did I end up over here in this context? It totally changed the flow. That's part of the problem. The other problem is when the revelations were given, when they were written down, who wrote them down, how was it preserved, was it preserved, and all of these different things. Now, obviously, like we saw here, they try to offer solutions. But you'll read this book and you'll see that the solutions they introduce are not helpful. They don't solve the problems. It's reasoning, rationalization, it's opinion. And I have a bunch of books on the subject of the Quran like this, and on the Hadith, same thing. This Quran is horribly, horribly written. The history of it is non-existent. It's a made-up history. Because whose opinion are you going to follow? Which scholars are you going to believe when you want to talk about the history of the Quran? Well, my sect believes this. My teacher, my scholar, or the one I follow believes this. But then there are these.
Well, they don't even know what it means, though. But
And then they don't know what it means.
Mm.
So that was just a taste and of Yazir Qadi's book and I liked it because he covered so many different points. So I appreciated that, and that's what we were able.
So many different opinions.
So many different opinions, and like everybody has a nose, everybody has an opinion. So that's what we have here. Now, if we go down 2 more slides, we did talk about al-Nasikh wal-Mansukh, which is the abrogator and the abrogated, but I just want to give some examples of the Quran's abrogation. Let's see. Oh, okay. That one, let's see. I'm just looking at my slides here. So I have those books here. Um, Actually, I have the PDF file of the book. And according to some Muslim commentators, more than 260 verses of the Quran have been abrogated. Others concede only 5 verses, while others deny there is any abrogation. So they can't even agree on abrogation. Some say
They,
260.
let me just understand. So there are certain Muslims who has got opinion about things. States there are 260 verses of the Quran have been abrogated, but also there are others says only 5 verses.
And others say none of them have been abrogated.
Okay,
So,
so then options are 250 versus 5 versus 0.
right. Thus, there is no general agreement as to what all the abrogated verses are. So they can't agree. This can become a point of confusion, as sometimes these abrogated verses deal with matters of life and death. For example, most scholars believe that the stoning verse, which we spoke about earlier, for adultery for married persons, which was once in the Quran, has been abrogated from recitation but remains in effect in the Sharia. So this is life and death here, folks, in some instances.
So let me just understand this. While if I remember correctly, Quran is identified as the word of God and it is well detailed, well explained, there is no contradiction in it, right?
Supposedly.
Yeah. And now as Allah kind of is revealing these verses through Gabriel, you've got certain opinions are telling us 260 verses of the Quran is being abrogated. Other opinion is 5, and another opinion is none of it is abrogated. So, am I right to assume that Allah, as He reveals this very clear book, does not state, here's the verse, I'm giving it to you, I'm going to abrogate it? Or He says, this verse is coming for the abrogation of this verse.
Well, according to some of the narrations, they were situational abrogations. It was a convenient abrogation. There was a
I don't know what
situation.
that means.
Well, there was supposedly so Muhammad had a situation which needed a solution, and Allah revealed a specific verse that would cancel something he had already said or already did, and this was the
Okay.
abrogation. Or Muhammad might have forgotten that he said something earlier, and then he says something new that contradicts it, and instead of saying, "Oops, I made a blunder," he says, "Oh, this abrogates that." So the new revelation cancels the old one. That's a form of abrogation.
Okay, so in that case, am I right to assume that earlier you expressed that Quran is the mother of the books?
Yes, the al-Kitab.
When Allah is abrogating things, Allah is just rewriting the mother of the books or redoing the mother of the books. Or if I also remember correctly, there are different opinions on this, whether the Quran is
Exactly right.
or not. So
Yes.
every time Allah is like meeting with the need of Muhammad or need of the situation, Allah is redoing His eternal word.
Good question. I think there are various opinions on that, because how do they account for the different, for instance, the king or the lord of the
King or the master.
or the master? Which one is written? Because this is not just about punctuation or pronunciation.
But that's not the abrogation. That's like different Arabic Qurans. I guess like the example here you are giving is like very important. So like even like adult breast suckling. So think about it. Adult breast suckling verse reveals comes for 10 times, and then that is being abrogated to 5 times, but both of them not in the Quran, yet they have been practiced in some Muslim countries.
Yes.
Stoning to adultery. it is not in the Quran, but something happened that it's been abrogated with, let's say, lashes, then why it has been kind of put together in practice? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you don't recite it, but you practice it.
Right. So it stays in the Sharia, but it's removed from the text.
Yeah, so was it removed from the mother of the books? Was it removed from the eternal tablets? And then just like something appeared in law? It just doesn't make it maybe because I'm a woman, it doesn't make sense to me, but don't know.
What doesn't make sense to me? What does that say about me? It's it's a very irrational, it's incomprehensible, and they know this. They have an issue.
You are taking it out of the Quran. You don't want people to recite, and yet you want people to recite, practice it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so it is a problem because, like I said earlier, sometimes it's convenience. They will, for instance, with haram and halal, there are times something can be haram, forbidden, sometimes it's halal, and then it will switch depending on the situation. It's arbitrary. It's opinion.
While people are kind of figuring out how many verses of the Quran is being abrogated, or whether it's abrogated or not, and then you point out if this is life and death matter, we got someone says, let's abrogate all of it and replace it with the Arabic Bible. Well, I am afraid that won't work because I don't think Yasir Qadi cares that much about your opinion.
Well, I do have the True Furqan here, which is the True Furqan. It's a work that is very similar to the Quran, where if you hand it to a Muslim, he thinks he's reading the Quran, but it's not the Quran at all. It was done to show that the Quran can be replicated and meet the challenge of bring something like it. It's a very interesting work, but yeah. So replacing the Quran with the Bible, I think that's a good opinion that Muslims will kick against. But yeah, we want to bring the Word of God and chase away the darkness. So I like that opinion. Now,
solution to everything is Lord Jesus Christ. Solution to everything. So, we don't know whether there is abrogation. We don't know if it is abrogated, how many verses are abrogated.
Well, because there'll be different opinions about it.
Okay.
There's always going to be somebody that disagrees with the abrogation or not abrogation. So then we go to, briefly, I want to mention the Asbab al-Nuzul, because that's important. And that is the reasons and occasions of the revelation of the Quran, which the earliest known work on the Asbab al-Nuzul, as mentioned by Ibn al-Nadir in his first Fihrist. It's Arabic words. They should have used a foreign word in that place. Is attributed to Ali. Anyways, the Sheikh of Imam al-Bukhari gave this book, which gives you the reasons and the occasions for the revelation. So in his opinion, this is why a certain verse was revealed and the occasion for why it was revealed, when, where, how. And these are important things, and I'll just reference one simple one, because I do have the book here. And in it, there's a stern warning for every Muslim that talks about the Quran in the verses of the Quran. So whenever a Muslim argues with you about the Quran, a verse, the context, the content, remind him of this, what's in this book here, which is the reasons and occasions of the revelation of the Quran. And on page 10, it says this: the doctrine of Islam threatens the one who disregards or is ignorant of this science concerning the book with the punishment of hellfire. So any Muslim that is ignorant of the reasons and the occasions of the revelation of the Quran is threatened by hellfire or with hellfire, according to the highest authority on the subject. The introduction to the book here. Whenever Muslims argue with us about a verse in the Quran, that doesn't mean this, or it doesn't mean that, or that's abrogated, or it's not abrogated, and they haven't taken the time to find out from the tafsirs, from the hadiths, from the sunnah, from the scholars, if what they're presenting is true to their strongest opinions of their scholars, they're putting themselves in danger of hellfire according to their own scholars. One of the oldest and most authoritative works on the subject. So Muslims, stop arguing with us out of ignorance. Don't give us your opinion. Give us the opinion of your masters, of your scholars. Because if you disagree with them, they are saying you're in danger of hellfire. So stop doing that. Just because you don't like what you're hearing, you don't like the way it sounds. So Muslims should just really just zip, go do their homework, then come back with knowledge. At least give us the opinions of your best scholars. Don't give us your opinions. That's what we're dealing with here, opinions. So give us the best opinions, not yours. Unless you think your opinion is better than their opinions. And see what a problem this is? It's a huge mess.
Well, who to decide whose opinion is better? It's very subjective thing.
Yeah.
Ibn al-Nadim, in his book Index, he talks about how he sees, if I remember correctly, how he sees like in 900s that there are different Arabic Qurans. He's still like seeing Ibn Masud's Quran, all that. That book like very, very helpful. Get it and read it. Those who are interested in completion of the Quran.
Yeah. Which slide are you on? Let me see. Okay, if you go down.
Slide number 22 out of 54.
If you go down 1, 2, 3 slides concerning the 6 verses in the Quran. Yeah, I just want to, I won't read them, but just so people can have the references to the Quran, to its own claim of abrogation. These are the verses that they would appeal to. And then the following slide are some examples of abrogation. And this would be concerning the relationship with the Christians, jihad, adultery, the percentage required for victory. So you have Surah 582, for instance, concerning relations, and 54. So in some cases, it cancels both the written words and their application in daily life. And that would be Surah 53:19. And then the second point I have here says it cancels the application, but still allows the written word to be recited. So you can recite it, but the application of it is canceled. And then another way of doing it is it cancels the recitation, but enforces the belief. So there's still practicing things. I'm sorry?
That's just an opinions, right?
Yeah, opinions again. Okay. And then the next slide will give you a bunch of examples, and I'll give you the abrogator and the abrogated on that. And so there you guys can screenshot that with the reference and ask the Muslim, which one should we follow and why? Who decided that this should abrogate that? And that's on different subjects. And there are a bunch of these. There's just so many. And then the next slide, I believe it's according to Ibn Kathir, where 71 out of 114 chapters, meaning 92.8% of the Quran has actually been abrogated. Even just the ayah of the sword, Surah
9.
9:5, abrogates all the peaceful verses. So any verse that talks about peace, harmony, unity, friendship, coexistence, such and so forth, any kind of reference like that is abrogated by the fact that Muhammad said, fight and kill the disbelievers wherever you find them, lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. But if they repent and pay the jizya, then their property and their lives will be safe. Something to that effect. So this abrogates a ton of the Quran. But because it's opinion, there are times where the Muslims will, for the sake of deception, jihad, political jihad, verbal jihad, they will deny that and practice the peaceful verses, waiting for the time where they can apply the jihad of the sword. Because according to Ibn Taymiyyah, Sheikh al-Islam, there's the jihad of the pen, the jihad of the mouth, the jihad of the sword. And each one has its place and time for when they can bring that out. And in my Quran, actually, wherever I have an appendix that talks about jihad, and it just praises jihad, and it gives you the different strategies of application. They've since discontinued that Quran with the appendix in it, and I've tried everywhere to find it online, to find it in bookstores, and they pulled it out. And Jarir from Jarir Bookstores told me they pulled that. But I have a copy where it has the appendix on jihad in the back of the Quran, and it's just praising jihad and the jihad of the sword and all of that. It's an explanation by Ibn Taymiyyah, Sheikh al-Islam. So very problematic, this concept of abrogation, because it allows a Muslim to apply something at one time and not apply it on another, and it's just a mess.
Because it seems to me, because early Muslims were having different opinions regarding obligation, all other things. Therefore, today, followers of Islam are not very clear that they pick and choose opinions. You get to meet with people who says, "Oh, your religion is to you, my religion is to me," versus other Muslim comes after you because you are people of the book or you are pagan. Islam, God of Islam didn't make things very clear for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I included one verse. I didn't get a chance to get into it, but it's Quran chapter 15, verses 90 and 91, where it talks about, as we have sent down on the dividers who have made the Quran into parts. I just want to reference that for everybody to go do their study on it, because it seems to be implying that the Quran was fragmented. The Quran was taken apart in that context. So just in passing, that's something for some homework for everybody to look into that verse. But if we keep going, I do have a screenshot of this book that I just showed. I didn't add anything to that. And then if we go down a little further, I have a slide, I think your slides are one off from mine. So I'm on slide 33 on my PowerPoint.
I'm on slide 33 too, brother.
Oh, okay. We're on the same page, Hatun. It's good to know. Okay, so the difference between Hadith and Sunnah. You know what? Let's skip that and go down 2 more slides. And this is just another work. It's called A Critical Study and Edition of the Manuscript of Al-Du'afa, or Weak Narrations. And we'll stop after this, because this was just on the Quran. We didn't even get into the issues with the Hadiths. Maybe we can save that for another time. You want to speak on something and I switch it on you. Just kidding. I'll follow the rules. Okay, so here we have a critical study edition on the weak narrations of Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari. So this is a critique of the weak narrations according to this opinion that were included in the works. And if we go to the next slide, we'll just read a couple of the sections that are in this PDF format of the book. Abstract. This thesis is primarily concerned with a study and critical examination of the manuscripts Al-Du'afa of Al-Bukhari, which is one of the earliest and most important manuscripts to be written on the subject of Al-Jarh wal Al-Ta'dil, disagreement and validity. Notice these key words where he's talking about the disagreement or validity. So there's a question there. There's disagreement. Um, the question of reliability. These are things that you need when you hear them, when you see them use this terminology. Stop for a second and think, oh, so they're disagreeing. Oh, he has a different opinion. Oh, he's not on the same page as that guy. So, oh, he's criticizing that one. Oh, he's throwing that one under the bus. This helps you understand that when the Muslims bring to you a narrative that says we only have one Quran, we have one religion, we're not, you know that they're lying or they're ignorant of it. And this is just an example of the Hadiths. Now that we dealt with the Quran, just to get a little taste of that they have the same issue with the Hadiths. So then he says, this thesis is one of the first to examine existing manuscripts of this work, and in it, 5 copies of the same manuscripts are compared. So 5 copies of the same manuscript are being compared. Why would you compare something if it's the same? So that's another key thing to pay attention to. It is one of very few studies in the English language that critically examines the books of Al-Jarh wal Al-Ta'dil to try to understand the methodology of its scholars and to attempt a reconciliation between their differing opinions. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to reconcile between their differing opinions. They're not in agreement here. So it's an attempt to produce a solution. At the same time, it will enrich the current Arabic literature in this field, as there has not yet been a complete study of this crucial manuscript in the field of Hadith. So this is new. Why haven't they done this before? Why is this the first time this is happening? Next slide. It continues. This thesis may be considered to be an exposition of 2 main points. Firstly, it collates and critically examines the terms of disagreement that have been used by al-Bukhari or transmitted by him from his teachers. So he's saying Bukhari transmitted points of contention, things that weren't in full agreement, or he simply transmitted those from his teachers that were an issue. So he's saying, so there isn't unanimity with the teachings or the narrations of Bukhari. So he's trying to show that they're trying to reconcile these problems. And a comparison of his usage of these terms with other common opinions, more opinions regarding them. Also, a comparison is made between Bukhari's usage of these terms in his manuscripts with his usage in his other books. Secondly, it involves a presentation of the manuscript, and I'll stop reading it, in a clear academic fashion that makes it accessible to students and researchers of all backgrounds. This study makes apparent the great importance of the manuscript. So this is a big deal to them, and they're trying to figure it out. Why did Bukhari present this? Why does this guy disagree with him? Why did Bukhari use something here and then use the same thing over here, but there seems to be some kind of an issue? And then we go to the next slide. So again, explaining the aim. The aim of this study is not just to be a presentation of an accurate academic edition of the manuscript, or a study of its terms, or a criticism of the methodology of al-Bukhari in authoring it, but rather it intends to be a significant contribution in the field. And then I got into the next slide. We'll end there. And here are the chapters. Notice the chapters in this edition, just so we realize just how messed up even the Hadiths are. Page 26, opinions on the start of fabrication. The start of fabrication? So they admit there was a point where fabrications were introduced. Then he deals with fabrication of Hadith during the lifetime of Muhammad. Wait a minute. So even while Muhammad was walking the earth, cleaning his garments, doing wudu, slaughtering people, having his fits, fabrications were being already circulated at the time of Muhammad. He deals with that. Then I'll go to the next bold letters. Fabrication of Hadith in the year 660 or 661. Take a pick there. Then fabrication of hadith in the last third of the first century. First century, the last third of it. So there's more
Okay, so
fabrications.
let's just bring it to my level, brother. Yeah, sometimes you are forgetting that I am woman. When it says fabrication, what does that mean, brother?
Intentional distortion.
Intentional lies.
Yes.
How intentionally they lied about what Muhammad said and did only 30 years after his death. How intentionally they lied about what Muhammad said and did only 10 years after his death. And
Hatun
not
was
only that,
in his
how
lifetime.
intentionally they continue to lie about Muhammad's life. 2nd and 3rd century, 4th century, 5th century, even 21st century of Islam.
It has not ended.
Yep. Never. This is never-ending lies. Actually,
No.
no. This is never-ending intentional lies. That's very
But-
important. Intentional things.
And although they include non-Muslims, the majority of this is dealing with Muslims themselves and with Muslim scholars, Muslim leaders. So this is what makes it even more problematic, that these aren't fabrications by the mushrikun, by those Jews and Christians, by the Zabians or whatever was out there. This is the followers of Muhammad that basically worshiped him. They are the fabricators. They are the ones that are innovating. They are the ones that are throwing in opinions that are contradictory to one another. They're the ones that are fighting. They're the ones that are murdering each other. What is going on here? And then down here we see chapter 2 shows that causes for the appearance of fabrications in Hadith. So he deals with the causes.
We've got people who intentionally lied about Muhammad, who is intentionally lying and creating different version of things or another version of things. But that's okay. Once we find the cause of this, we will fix it.
Yeah. And some of the causes are mentioned: the heretics, the storytellers. So these were the ones that would go around telling the stories about Muhammad and his life and practice, and the partisanship. So you have the divisions, the schisms, or the companions. And everyone is guilty here.
Remember,
No one.
they were
Nobody. There was nobody that didn't fabricate. Everybody was throwing in their opinions and fabrications. It seems like good.
very
darn-
innocent, very innocent thing to do.
Yeah. So that's just to whet your appetite, kids, concerning the fact that when it gets to the Hadith, it's no better than the Quran. Which is funny, because it's like, if the Quran is the ultimate standard, the ultimate book, the ultimate revelation, we shouldn't expect the Quran to be any better preserved, right? Wouldn't it be wild to say that the Hadith had been preserved, but the Quran was not? So we would expect, if the Quran was fabricated, corrupted, innovated, abrogated, manipulated, such and so forth, what should we expect of the Hadiths and anything below that? What a mess. And so I have a bunch of books on that, on the Hadiths, and here, let me just flash a few. So these are all on the Hadiths, just little booklets dealing with the science of Hadith and mentioning stuff like this. They mention the innovators by name, the scholars, who they were arguing with, who they lied about, why they think they lied about them, the attempt to reconcile them. And I have more there. Muslims aren't reading these things. A lot of Christians, if you're going to get involved in debate with Muslims about this, read their material. Although I read Christians on these subjects, the majority of my information first comes from the Muslims themselves, so that I don't misrepresent them. I'm not going to innovate their works. I'll be better than they are about their own works. I'm going to present their works like I have done here, according to them. Just read it to them. Say, look, Yasir Qadi in his book said this. And he mentions a scholar. What do you say to that, Muslim? Look, Ibn Taymiyyah said this. Oh, Ibn Abbas said that. I'm quoting. I'm not inventing. And now they have to deal with their own issues in their own house, and they can't blame us for presenting them with what they themselves have introduced.
Wouldn't you assume that since in Surah 69 that Allah is gonna, if Muhammad makes up something, invent something, Allah is gonna cut his ear out? Wouldn't you expect like Muslims to learn from that? Therefore, they don't invent things.
Right, because remember, even Muhammad copied Allah, even though Muhammad didn't keep his part of the bargain with Allah because he did invent something. Muhammad also, according to a Hadith narration, said that anyone who invents anything about him that he didn't say, they're going to have an issue. I'm just paraphrasing, but he said something similar to his followers that Allah said to him, according to the Hadiths.
It seems clearly Muslims didn't learn, so they were intentionally making up things, and then at the end, the things we have in our hands, the reason we have them because opinions of other people lost and opinions and power of other people won. It seems that's the kind of how it ended up. Do you want to continue or?
I think we're good because the next slides are just going to get into the Hadiths. Let me see, and I think we'll be here another 4 hours. Or let's see. Yeah, I think that should be fine.
Okay, we stop there.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good place to stop.
Okay. It's been very concerning. 2 hours, 46 minutes, 44 seconds, brother. It's been very concerning in a sense that it breaks my heart to know that early Muslims don't even know what Quran is. It is concerning, breaks my heart to know that early Muslims are trying to find the right things to define what the Quran is. And they identify that, yeah, this is the very Arabic speech of Allah, yet different opinions try to justify it, try to discredit that, and then at the end, well, we don't know.
You gotta shrug your shoulder. You just say, opinions.
But this is not like something. It's not like we are talking about like, oh, would you like your coffee black or with milk? It's not like something like that. So those are like very basics. Like who decided what name of the Quran? Who decided like call this book Quran? Who knows what does it mean? Why it is being compiled? So like very, very basics. It's all matter of opinion, and whoever is in the power or whose opinion is being supported, identified as the strongest opinion, not because they kind of figured out historically that opinion is what it was, because there were powers behind these opinions, and then their opinions kind of made it to today.
Well, these opinions have had consequences for 1400 years that have caused suffering and pain and death and chaos. This is why the Bible is very clear. The Bible tells us, lean not on your own understanding, but in all of your ways acknowledge him. Take every thought captive, make it subject to the authority of Christ. You know, a foolish man follows his heart. We need to follow the Lord. Our hearts can deceive us. We can be led astray. We're emotional creatures. We're irrational at times. We need to test everything. We need to subject it to God's perfect, authoritative word. And since the Muslims don't have a perfect, authoritative work foundation upon which they can build their opinions, they're all over the place. We Christians go to the scriptures. When we say, what would Jesus do? you know, it's a little saying in the West. What would Jesus do? We're talking about it in a situational thing. The only reason we can say that is because we know the nature of Christ. We know his character. We know his heart. He's revealed it to us. And so we're using the foundation of the Bible and its revelation to live our lives in such a way that are in accordance to his will. So we can't say, what would Jesus do in this circumstance? Because we have the whole of Scripture, not just the words in red, the whole of the Bible to lead us and guide us as a perfect, infallible, incorruptible, irrefutable foundation. The Muslims
But
don't have it.
I think one of the things here is this is not mainly like comparing things of Jesus or life of Jesus to other opinions. In here, opinions are deciding what needs to be. Opinions are deciding what Islam is. Opinions are deciding what Islam, like opinions are simply overriding Quran. Imagine like someone turns up and then says, well, it is nice thing that Jesus says this, but I am overriding what Jesus is saying. Everyone would say like, that's not acceptable at all. But in Islam, you have is like, okay, these are the opinions overriding what Allah intended. And well, even though opinion is not supported today, that was the opinion, so we go for it. It's like,
Yeah, well,
you go to
Allah,
shop and this is what you pick.
what they're showing us, Hatun, is that Allah wasn't clear as he thinks he was. Because if Allah would have been clear, there wouldn't be an opinion. We would just say, this is what Allah said, and it's clear. So when they invent an opinion, they're only demonstrating to us that they don't think Allah was clear enough. So they need to help them out in a sense and clarify for him.
You are comparing Allah with me then. I wasn't very clear what I asked you. So clearly. So Allah is supposed to be the best communicator ever, but individuals are stepping in and then trying to help him with his communication skills.
Yeah, and I guess we also have to sharpen our listening skills, because sometimes we don't listen too good. And when we think we hear something, we translate it or abrogate it and give our own opinion.
Yeah, you fell into that. You fell into that one. Brother, do you know someone called Michael Clark? Did you hire this person to come and harass my live stream about
He
you?
must be, in my opinion, he seems like a very good fellow.
In my opinion, you hired this gentleman to jump into my live stream. Okay, so where do we end up now? So there are lots of different opinions on very basics of everything. Where to go from here?
Well, I'm going to go get tacos, but to go as far as intellectually from here, we go to our knees in prayer for these poor souls that are being led astray by such absurdities, clear absurdities, clear. It's like, how does one recover from this information that comes from their own camp? There's no way out of this for the Muslim. So we need to intercede for them, because they're not doing it. They have no communication with God. Someone needs to step in the gap and cry out for their souls. So they're in ignorance. They're in darkness. They're the ones that have their eyes stopped and their ears stopped, and they can't see that, because there is such a thing as self-deception. A person can deceive themselves into thinking they're in the truth or in the light when they're really in darkness. We know better. We've had the light shed upon us. Our eyes are open. Our hearts are open, enlightened. And we have a standard by which we can test these things. We can judge rightly. The Christian is the only one on earth that can make righteous judgments concerning life and godliness. No one else can. Not the Buddhist, not the Hindu, not the Mormon. The Christian is the one that has God-given authority and enlightenment through the Spirit of God to make spiritual judgments. And these things that the Muslims have been handed to by Islam, by Muhammad, if he existed, are darkness, and they're leading them straight into the pit. So we are the ones that come, and we do as the Bible says in one of the most often misquoted verses or misapplied verses, judge not lest you be judged. Keep reading. For by whatever judgment you judge, it shall be judged unto you. So it says, but when you judge, not if, when you judge a righteous judgment. In other words, don't be a hypocrite in your judgments. Be walking in the light, walk in the truth, walk in righteousness, be in the Lord. And then when you talk to somebody in the streets or anywhere else or online, and you pass a judgment on spiritual matters, you're doing it with a clear conscience. And you're doing it because the Lord is guiding you to do it. And so we're the ones that can come to the Muslim and every other person that's not a non-Christian and judge their worldview. We are called as Christians to do that. We're called to judge worldviews and dismantle
the arguments.
Yeah, take it and dismantle it for the destruction of the kingdom of darkness, the glory of God, and the salvation of their souls. That's where we go.
Okay.
In my opinion. No, I'm kidding.
It's good that you've got opinion on things. Truth Defenders, are you going to NAPC? What does that stand for?
Hey, it's Mel. God willing, Mel's a cool guy. We hung out in London. I think it should be Mel. God willing, we do it all over again, and go to the different places, conferences, the speaking, the gatherings. That would be awesome.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for joining me, brother. Before I let you go, what is it coming up beside taco? It's just like focus on a serious part. What is coming up in your channel? What are you up to these days? How can people pray for you? How can people support you?
You shouldn't have said that I should be serious, Hatun. That strikes a funny bone. Okay, I'll be serious. My channel next, with your brother in Christ, we are going to deal with Isa of the Quran. We were going to do it last time, but we stayed with Joseph Smith's or the Mormon churches, which is a non-Christian cult, their concept of Jesus, what they introduce. This next time, we're going to deal with Isa, so the Jesus of the Quran contrasted with the biblical Jesus, and we're going to show that the Jesus of the Quran is not the Son of God, not the Son of Mary, not the Messiah, not the Savior. So that's one of the things we're doing. And as far as my personal life, just pray for my health, my work, my studies, that this ministry online continues and grows, and I improve, I get better, and make things more presentable. Can you hear?
And with your listening skills?
My listening, they said I was crazy. That's the sound. You're cuckoo.
No, that's like listening skills.
My listening skills, because a lot of this is just I'm starting to put it together, kids. It's stuff I've used out in the streets, and I have a lot of presentations, and I have a lot of the books, but to do it in this format, I'm just it's a work in progress. So pray that it gets refined, and I want to be able to do this, Hatun. I want to be able to take the information, make articles, so that then people can download the notes. So pray for that.
Like a bulletin?
Yeah, this way they can just download a PDF file of all the information and use it and do whatever they want with it. That would be helpful, I think.
Phil, thank you very much for posting your Brothers in Christ channel. Please check that out, subscribe it if you haven't. and Truth Defenders, I put the link to your channel in my description.
Thank you.
If I am right, you are doing the live streams in your channel, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to put this material in bulletin form, booklet form, for people to get access. How can people support you?
Prayer. Pray. Yeah, that for wisdom. I need wisdom. That's for sure. Diligence, listening skills. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, brother. When is your next live stream? You said you've got next live. You didn't give the date.
We're doing it every 2 weeks. The last one was on the 3rd, so I'm assuming sometime
On 17th?
right around there, I think. Yeah. I can't see
Okay.
the calendar from here.
Okay.
Yeah.
We keep eye on that. If anyone hasn't subscribed that channel, please check it out. Go and ask Truth Defenders to defend himself.
Oh yeah, I need to ask Hussein to go with me to go see the Warner.
You don't need to go and see Warner. You need to go and preach him. That guy is very, very violent guy. He needs to repent and turn to Lord Jesus Christ before.
Well, then you go with me, Hatun, because.
Depend when it is.
Okay. Well, he's been there for a while. I only heard about him from Hussein when he was threatened.
I never heard this guy until 2 days ago. Someone sent me the clip to say like, "Oh, did you see this video?" I was like, "What is that video?" That was the first time I heard of him. I'm not that much on social media. I don't know that what's happening in the world stuff. I'm not.
Did you see the video I sent you with Hussein?
Yeah, I have seen that, but you sent that video too late. You could send that video to me a little bit earlier. I could put up with the Warner. Apparently, the Warner. I put up this short video. There's this Muslim guy called the Warner, who is like almost beating this guy up because this guy called Julian, who just got into Islam, figured out that the reason there is Allah is because he called his dog Muhammad, and then dog winked back, and then the one grabs him. Yeah, grabs him. Like you can see, like the way he does it, like the table kind of moves stuff, all that very kind of not very wise to do.
The
Especially
comparison
in America.
It was like grabbing a rag doll. It was the poor little guy just got pulled in, knocked onto the table, and this guy's just over him. Big guy. He's just a bully, and he needs to hear the truth. And
so in that, Truth Defender brought to my attention last night that he threatened brother Hussein Mashni and his wife as well. So what we learned from this is not only Muslims have lots of opinions about every basics, but they don't know anything about these opinions. Therefore, when they hear anything, what is the way to approach this? Violence.
I've tasted one of those. I got punched in the jaw once by a Muslima. Long time ago.
It's not only Muslim man, but Muslim woman. So
she had a good. She was like a boxer or something.
It's amazing that Islam doesn't kind of think that much about gender, doesn't care about that much gender, destroys every heart and every soul it touches, makes human beings men of violence and kind of not very good. Not only puts them in hell in for eternity, but destroys them.
And this is why the freedom of speech is so important, folks, because when we have differences of opinions and we're not allowed to discuss them, all that happens is it gets bottled up, and it turns to frustration, turns to anger, animosity. And the only way to express it is violently, usually. And so when a government or authorities suppress that, even religious leaders suppress that, the freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, they're only creating a problem, because you're not allowing a person to express themselves, to ask questions, to receive information, be it critical or positive. And that is what causes a lot of the tension. When we're allowed to sit down and talk to one another, it is so freeing. It is so liberating to be able to express our differences agreeably. And that doesn't lead to violence, other than when we don't. For instance, when it's just a yelling match and no communication happening, you notice the tension build and the aggression, and eventually someone ends up getting punched. But when they're having a discussion and both sides are being heard, it usually doesn't end in violence. It can, but it usually doesn't. So we need to continue to fight for the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression. We need to fight for the right of Muslims in Muslim countries to express themselves without the fear of consequence. They should be able to ask questions. They should be able to question things. They should be able to hear different opinions and worldviews. And that way they can make an intelligent decision. Why would you want somebody to follow something blindly, force them to believe? How that still doesn't put belief in their heart. Tricking somebody into believing something, you didn't really change their view, you tricked them. Forcing them to believe, you didn't change their heart, you changed the outward appearance where they're pretending to believe. So how does that benefit the person doing that to the other? But when you let them make their choice, and they make it a free choice out of an intelligent inquiry, now you've won somebody over, truly. And that's what we as Christians want to do. We want to lay it all out on the table and say, come, taste and see that the Lord is good. We have no fear of criticism. We have no fear. God is not afraid of the critic. God is not afraid of scrutiny. God welcomes it. Come on, test me and see if I am not God. See if I have not said these things and they come to pass. The Bible invites the critic to test it.
If you think like that's like another topic, we can just like have conversation on it. But when you think about it, even in the garden, man and woman is questioning the goodness of God. People of Israel have seen how awesome God is, yet they are still questioning his goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Hosea expresses, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Isaiah talks about, come, let us reason together. So God is not afraid of people are questioning. God is not hiding away or chopping someone's head off because someone questioned him. Eternal Son of God steps into the world while even he's just like in cradle, people are questioning him. To the cross, people are questioning him. Even today, people are questioning him. And that's absolutely fine. It should be absolutely fine. Once you start silencing, closing down the discussions and debates, yeah, that's what you are going to get. You are going to get people who try to find new ways to express their thoughts.
Yeah.
But for us to get away from that, all we need is Jesus Christ. Oh, that's all we need.
Amen.
He is answer to everything and everybody. And I think we will stop there. 3 hours, 8 minutes, 18 seconds, brother.
Well, somebody was late, Hatun, so we could have finished earlier.
It wasn't about being late, brother, but that's okay. That's okay. Thank you very much. All the thank you very much. All the different opinions you shared with us.
No problem.
Very, very grateful. It's just now we need to figure out which opinion Mr. or Mrs. Muslim follows and why.
Right.
That's what we need to figure out now.
That is the key point right there. Why? Why are you picking this opinion? Or why are you making up your own opinion contrary to those opinions? So yeah, that's actually a very good point. The opinions are there. Now, why are you choosing this one and not that one?
You don't need to be jealous because your opinion didn't make into Yasser Qadhi's book, brother. maybe in upgraded book, it will be updated book, it will be there.
Yeah, new information.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone who joined us in this live stream, as well as thank you very much, Brother Lewis, for joining us. We will see you in your live stream or in different platforms. And by God's grace, we will see everyone in another live stream. Meantime, as it's been expressed earlier, please pray for Jai's YouTube channel, as Sharia Trip is kind of after them. Pray for them, and by God's grace, we will see you again. Until I see you, may Christ crucified silent you with his love.
Shalom.